All right. We are back with the Shadow Realm podcast here on Friday night. Peace, love, and chaos to everybody out there down here in hell with us. I hope all is well. How's it going, Mad Hatter?
Man, shit. It's going great down here, man. It's going great.
Burning real good.
Yes, sir. Got the coals
Hmm.
hot, smoke going.
Yes,
Done
sir.
took, done took my shot of fire and brimstone, and I'm ready to go.
There you go. That's what I like to hear. I love it. Just remember, everybody, the higher you go up on the pyramid, the less stones you have. So everybody cannot come to the top with you. All right, so we'll get right into it tonight. Just a quick review of everything that we covered last time here on the Shadow Realm podcast. We started off with our introduction of Peter Levenda's The Dark Lord. All right, so just going into that first chapter, we learned about pretty much the origins of the Immaculate Conception, and that it was actually the story of Shiva and poverty. And Shiva was taking poverty to Pound Town so hard that the other gods said, "We got to stop this." And they caused him to ejaculate. And she caught it in her mouth, but they said she might have caught it in her hand too because it was so much.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
she
so
straight up tricking.
mm.
I don't know if you want to call it tricking, but shit, whatever the hell it is, man. She was out there doing the do, man. You know what I'm saying? There ain't nothing wrong with that. The
Nasty
church,
girl.
yeah, man. The church try to make it seem like sex is nasty, and shit. Everybody had to come through there to get that. Ain't no damn immaculate conception. Everybody had to get a nut bust up in them. Every woman had to get one bust up in her some way in order for her to get pregnant. Whether they do it
Yes,
artificially
sir.
or naturally, but they got to bust that nut up in her now.
But I'm gonna tell you what, poverty and Mary Magdalene's story, even though it's the same story, that wasn't no artificial.
No, sir. Hey, what's that? I know people don't like it. What was that girl say? Ain't nothing artificial. No, sir. That was the. I was talking about what was that girl's name? I can't remember. Hell, anyway, but I was thinking about this rapper. But anyway, yeah, it was nothing artificial about that though.
Mm-mm.
Mm-mm.
Not at all. Not at all. He was taking her to Pound Town, and the result is what we in right now. So they say.
Man, we reading this Dark Lord, and pretty much, I mean, from what I'm getting from this thing, man, hell, you the Dark Lord. You know what I'm saying?
You are the Dark Lord.
You are the Dark Lord, and you don't even know you the Dark Lord. I mean, you sit down here
Mhm.
running. That's why they used to call niggas spooks, man. And you
Yes,
sit down
sir.
here, you running from everything evil. You scared your own doppelganger. You got to be careful.
Mhm.
And I know we talk about the book, but you got to be careful listening to these people because they will mislead you on this gnosis. Because the gnosis, people have a tendency of taking the gnosis or the knowledge, man, and tailoring it to their needs for their particular circumstance or their life or their genetic makeup. But if you want to go to the original makeup with this gnosis, man, the doppelganger is your soul. That's your
Mm.
monstrous soul. That's yourself in the spirit world. They ain't got nothing to do with someone that you look like and all that other kind of bull crap they be telling you. And so, when you scared of all these things that you call evil or these things that you call being scary or unclean spirits, what you're saying is, I hate myself, or I have been taught to hate myself, or I have been taught to be scared of myself. And pretty much you're scared of your own shadow, which is another word for your melanin. Bobby Hemmett told you that. So,
Yes, sir.
you become a spook because you scared of your own self. You know what I mean? That's just like you jumping at your own shadow,
You scared of your own shadow.
literally.
Yes,
And
sir.
that, like you said, the higher up you go, man, the less people gonna agree with us, and they gonna think that we
Hmm.
crazy as hell, man. And I'm all right with that, man.
But that's okay because at one point in my life I thought anything outside of the church or the mosque or the Hebrew Israelite rallies, I thought niggas was crazy.
What about the Buddhism when they had you staring at the wall? Remember that?
I thought anything outside of Buddhism was crazy either, but I received some gnosis from that monk at that temple, and he told me straight up after we was drinking tea. He said, "Look, whatever you're trying to find, you ain't gonna find it here."
You know, I remember I was going everywhere looking for God, man. I even remember going into I don't know, you know, they call them botanicas or like these stores. Sometime a witch might own it
Bodega.
or something. And I said, you know, I'm looking for God. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, she gave me her little typical answer about, well, you know, you might want to read this book, or you might want to check in this person, or one person even told me, yeah, man, you might want to read some books by Joseph Campbell. Man, I laugh at that stuff now. But, you know, it all was a part of going down the yellow brick road, man, to find that Wizard of Oz. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
And, you know, it took a lot until I got to the point where I clicked my heels, man, and said, there's no place like home. There's no place like home. There's no place like home. And I realized I was in a dream, man. The only thing is I haven't fully woke up from the dream yet, man, because now I know it's a dream. I need to be able to control this thing. But a lot of people, like you said, still in that sleep paralysis. And when I found out that I was the Dark Lord, but I'm everything. And when I found that out, man, man, my life took a whole different turn. My perspective, man, of reality, man, changed, man. It was just, I got a whole different outlook, man, on life, man. And you know, you can't tell people. It's not my job to tell people how to think. It's not my job to tell people they're wrong, because I can't say you're wrong. That might be the path you're supposed to travel. You might be supposed to travel the path of a sheep. You might be supposed to travel the path of an ignoramus. You might be supposed to follow the path of someone that goes up in the church and be speaking in tongues and mopping the floor up with dust and everything. You know, that mean that might be you might be supposed to eat the body. You know, you might supposed to be accountable and eat nuts, balls, and guts and shit sack and everything. You know, your savior, crunchy skull and everything.
Eating it all, baby.
Huh?
Eating it all, cleaning that plate.
Urine and feces and everything.
All you want.
God is good.
Yes, sir.
That might be your plan, and I ain't mad at you, man. Because you know everybody out here trying to force their belief on you, man. I don't give a damn what you believe, man. But if you wanna upgrade your belief, man, because like I tell people, and I know we gonna get to this book, you can be anything you want. You can program your mind and think and be anything you want it to be. And the best that most people can come up with is they want to be a servant. And that is hilarious to me.
Let the church say amen.
You know, you're like, what do you want to be? I want to be somebody's lapdog. I want to serve somebody. I want to be on my knees begging Big Daddy that got me down here in a place, man, where animals eat each other or humans run after humans to eat them. You know what I'm saying? I want to be down here, man, where it's a place where little girls and little boys are chased by pedophiles, and a God that put me in a place like that, man, where they can get choked out and raped, man, and treated all kind of ways and be skinned out and then drink their blood and grind their meat up and serve them as hamburgers at McDonald's. I want to serve that God.
And I want to serve him.
Huh?
I said some people say I want to serve him, but I want to
serve him. That's what they say. And then get mad with you. And then they turn around and they got to the point where they got psychosis, so they had to give him another name. So, you know, they come up with all, man, I'm going to tell you, man, people come up with all kind of BS, man, in order to justify their psychosis because they too scared to take accountability. Because I'm going to tell you.
Yes, sir.
It takes some guts, man, to sit down and realize that you are responsible for your life.
Yes, it is.
That you created all this foolishness, man. You remember that? I don't want to get into all that. We'll cover this when we get into our regular podcast.
Oh, yeah. We'll get there.
When we start doing our episodes, you know, we got some things we got to do. So we doing this book. But, man, you think we come in with it with these books. You wait till we get in these episodes and we start having topics and breaking it down. And you know,
Yes, sir.
we ain't looking for no spooky ass, scary ass, people that want to come up here bringing your book talking about my Most High. Man, fuck your Most High.
All
You know what I'm
right.
saying? When you come here, either you gonna learn how to be a creator, or you will get the hell from around here, because you ain't gonna be able to stand the heat, and you ain't bringing me no smoke. You
All
can't
right.
bring me no smoke, because your God can't do a damn thing to me or for me, because if he can't do nothing to me, and he can't do nothing for me, because anything he do for me would be a blessing for him or
Yes,
her.
sir. Well,
But
you
let's
heard
get
it from the
to
Mad Hatter himself, folks, and we'll get right into it.
it. Man, I
So
don't give a
just
fuck.
remember, everybody, before we get started, the only way out is in. All
Yes, sir.
right. So what I'm going to read is a little bit of verses from some Aleister Crowley before we get started with chapter 2. I have hidden myself beneath a mask. I am a black and terrible God. With courage conquering fear, shall ye approach me. Ye shall lay down your heads upon mine altar, expecting the sweep of the sword. But the first kiss of love shall be radiant on your lips, and all my darkness and terror shall turn to light and joy. Just remember, folks, that terror is going to turn to light and joy. But can't be afraid to look in the mirror and say, I am that I am. All right. So we'll get started on chapter 2, Gods, the Beast, and Men. All right. So first we have a quote by Emil Durkheim from The Elementary Forms of the Religious Life. A church of magic does not exist. So Durkheim's statement reflects his understanding that magic is not amenable to rituals of group worship, since the approach to the sacred that is undertaken by the magician is a delicate operation that requires precautions and a more or less complicated initiation. So, one of the things that we have to cover before we go deeper into this chapter, when we talking about initiation, you should be the one that initiates yourself. You need to be the one who initiates yourself and says that I can stand up on my own 2 feet and I can tie my shoes, I can shower, I can put on my own clothes, I can pay my bills, I can cook my own food, I can put gas in my car, because you don't need to be in Big Daddy house no more. But some people want to be in Big Daddy's house, and they think that they are the initiates, and they think that they are initiated. And some people that are a part of, we'll say, certain clubs and groups out here, we're not really going to go into it, but those people get initiated into these clubs and groups, and they will still limit their growth mentally and spiritually. So we'll keep going on.
Yeah,
All
and
right.
I'm gonna say this. I mean, we know what I mean. Because you can go online and see it. We talking about these Masonic organizations, these Shrine organizations, these different type of organizations that's like that, and these people think that they're so high and mighty and they know all this knowledge, and really you don't know nothing, because that knowledge that they teach you on the lower levels, man. Knowledge always alludes to higher levels of understanding, and a lot of times, depending upon those organizations, that higher level of understanding gets more and more toxic and evil. And it's not because the knowledge is evil, it's because the intent of the people that are making these groups do that. uh a lot of times you can take a lot of these symbols that you hear these sheep talking about. Oh, that's satanic. Oh, that's devil. That's the devil worship. And it doesn't mean satanic. It doesn't mean devil. It doesn't mean evil. It's just basically giving you a description, man, of energies, man. It's just like, and we gonna leave this. I'm gonna let it go, but it's just like this, man. If you dumb enough to drink a glass of bleach because you think it's water, and then you want to call the glass of bleach evil, is it the bleach evil, or you just dumb as hell?
Mm, 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 mm.
You know what I'm saying? Now, if you take the
Bleach,
bleach and
water.
use it like it's supposed to be, you're gonna be all right.
Mm-hmm.
But if you giving it to people to drink as water or giving it to people to drink as liquor and it's killing them, and then you talking about it's evil, it ain't got nothing to do with evil. It's your ignorance and stupidity. Well, it's that's kind of oxymoron because usually, I mean, you're ignorant, and then once you refuse or don't want to hear anything or value or weigh something, then it turns from being ignorant to stupidity. Because
Mm.
ignorance can be cured, stupidity can't. You know.
All right.
But anyway, on with the
All right.
chapter.
Yeah, so we'll get back into it because we have a lot of interesting things to cover in chapter 2 tonight. So so
Tulu.
I'll continue. All right. Anyone witnessing some of the celebrations of the Mass, the Gnostic Mass, by members of the Gnostic Catholic Church at various times over the previous 5 decades or so would recognize obvious differences in style from those of normative Christian denominations. Now, this is very important. It may be argued that some magicians are not priests by nature. They are individual, solitary persons devoted more to their own spiritual development than to the spirituality of a group. That's what your magicians are. All right. So on page 78, it goes into the scandalous, right? Things like that with Aleister Crowley, but we'll skip over that and we'll get to the good stuff. So about Crowley, virtually all of his teachings were designed for those belonging to one or both of his most important magical societies. The I think it might have been the Golden Dawn or whatever it is, and the OTO.
OTO. Yeah.
Yeah, and the OTO, neither of which were designed with communities of worshipers in mind, but which are predicated on the idea of individual, not group attainment. And that's what we got for here tonight for you folks. We just want you to be strong as an individual. His theology is easily summed up in the familiar: do what thou wilt shall be, the whole of the law. And love is the law. Love under will. After one exhorts everyone to do their will, that every man and every woman is a star. There is not much else to the theology or the doctrine. The core of the Thelema is in the work itself, the great work of uniting oneself with one's holy guardian angel, to use the Golden Dawn and OTO terminology, and that is an individual and not a group endeavor. So this is a very individual endeavor, folks. The famous biblical 10 commandments handed down to Moses from God consists of 3 commandments concerning sins against God and 7 commandments prohibiting sin against the community. There is no identification of sins against oneself. It is as if God and community were all that mattered spiritually. That if one abides by the rules of God and family, then one has already avoided sin against oneself. What Thelema does is question that assumption. In other words, is it possible to sin against oneself? The Thelemic answer is a definite yes. If one obeys the commandments concerning God and the community to the detriment of oneself, then one is sinning against oneself. What Crowley does is turn the assumptions implicit in the Abrahamic religions on their head by insisting that, and this is very important, folks, the individual matters more than the community.
Sound like ham sandwich to me, brother. I always say if you got 2 people starving and you got a ham sandwich, And you used to sharing your ham sandwich. You
Mm-mm-mm.
better eat that ham sandwich and get you some substance so you can keep moving on.
My goodness.
Because
All
all you
right.
doing is,
So let's
yeah.
go on down to our next paragraph from here. All right. So Crowley understood the sacrament of the Mass, and most especially the rite of transubstantiation, as a Gnostic rite of transformation. And it can be argued that is so, or certainly can be interpreted that way. The problem remains, however, how to teach this concept to the general public if it has no background in religious studies, Gnosticism, or Tantrism, much less Kabbalah or ceremonial magic. All right, folks. So we are on page 80 now. So buckle up, it's about to get really good. A further difficulty is raised by the unitary form of the Catholic Mass in its single priest celebrant. This dynamic was transformed by the Crowley Church into a dual priesthood of a man and a woman, a priest and a priestess. On a very basic liturgical level, this presents problems in conceptualization, but most importantly, in the identification of two individuals with the appropriate transformative power, which must take place simultaneously and in harmony. There are other more easily organized rituals that involve male and female participants, which could have been used instead or simply invented. But this is very important, folks. But it was Crowley's intention to use the Catholic Mass as the basic structure, possibly with a view towards forcing the public to understand the sexual component of a rite, with which they were already familiar, albeit in different contexts, and thus providing a kind of legitimacy of lineage, much in the same way pagan shrines in Europe were converted into Catholic holy places by the building of churches on the same spots. Mm-mm-mm.
Hostile takeover.
Yes, sir. My goodness. So what we learning tonight is that it's not about the group. It ain't about Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, Nation of Islam, Hebrew Israelite, 5%ers. It ain't about none of that. It's
Large
about
body.
that person. Yeah, it's
It,
about that person you see in the mirror, and that's what it's about. So,
it ain't about all these different denominations, all these
yeah,
groups. You know, you people they want to identify. I'm this. I'm that. Look, man, I am original incarnate from Pangea or Pangaea,
hmm
however you want to enunciate it, and that means I transcend all these labels that people put on themselves. I am of the original energy of the polarities that were split from the neutral being, the creator.
yes, sir.
And
Yes,
so,
sir.
people down here fighting amongst each other, man, about yeah, well, I'm this and I'm that, and I'm from this part of the world, I'm from that part of the world. Man, goddamn, I came from the damn original seed.
But you know what we just went over just now, it tells us that at one point in human history, we understood it was about the individual. And if the
Yes,
individual could better themselves, then the community could strengthen itself. But what happened is like they said, and I'll read it again, folks. Much in the same way, pagan shrines in Europe were converted into Catholic holy places by the building of churches on the same spots.
hostile
So,
takeover, man. And
hostile takeover.
and what was that? John Anthony West. He said the same thing happened with the sun, with the
Yeah.
sun worshippers of Egypt.
hmm
Where a lot of people are these sun worshippers, and you got white people and black people fighting about who was the Egyptian man. Look, let me tell you something, and I'm just gonna tell you this. You're not gonna convince me that someone that's allergic to the sun spent 4,000 years goddamn worshiping their enemy. I don't even want to
So,
hear that bullshit.
well, one of the things that
And the enemy is the
was,
sun, huh?
one of the things that was pried and beat into my brain as a child in the public school indoctrination camp was Egypt has pyramids, but we would always learn about Egypt as if it was in a whole nother country and Africa is a million miles away. But
And,
that's not the case.
and the old
So,
saying is, if you really want to see the true Egyptians, you got to go to Sudan, because you
my
know Egypt and
goodness.
Sudan was one at one time. It split up.
But we will be getting into Egypt real soon within this book, folks.
Yes,
So
sir.
buckle up. All right. Central to
Pre-dynastic
most
too. But go ahead.
central to most descriptions of religions is the concept of a god or gods, while the word religion is relatively new and is in fact problematic in some cultures, which do not recognize this artificial distinction between spirituality and other areas of culture. We can assume, for the sake of this essay, that religions, popularly understood, rely upon the existence of some kind of supernatural power, creator, or cosmic judge we call a god. And he's a good boy for me, folks.
Boy.
Believe that. Yes,
Good,
sir. Good
good,
little boy.
good boy.
All
Because if
right.
he ain't a good boy,
One
I'm
of the
gonna put
most
my foot in his. But go ahead.
one of the most bewildering aspects of Thelema to outsiders is the near chaotic assembly of gods, goddesses, and techniques from religious traditions spanning the globe and the centuries. We have seen some of this in the previous chapter. While the book of law is focused on Egyptian gods, by the time one is finished with even a cursory look at Crowley's writings, one realizes that Egypt is not the only cultural touchstone for the movement. So, Crowley's own self identification with the beast of the book of Revelations and his Soror Mystica as the Scarlet Woman or Whore of Babylon seems at the first glance to be out of sync with the rest of his philosophy. After all, the beast 666 and the Whore of Babylon are characteristics specific to the Christian Bible. How does one rectify the biblical personalities with ancient Egyptian or Sumerian archetypes? Crowley's early childhood was spent in somewhat lethal embrace of a Christian sect called the Plymouth Brethren. In fact, that he attended schools run by the Brethren for most of his childhood and adolescence, only escaping the denomination by the time he enrolled at Trinity College in Cambridge in 1895. As a child, his mother would refer to him as the beast, with its obvious biblical connotations, and it seems Crowley took the appellation to heart, particularly as he got older and began to question Christianity. He never abandoned the beast nomenclature. However, he seemed to feel that this was an aspect of his identity, not only as a human being, as his mother's son, but as a magician and a prophet of the new age. Thus, in order to overthrow the old age, he came to identify himself with its anti god, the beast of Revelation. This would predate any exposure Crowley had to the rich fabric of Egyptian spirituality. It was most likely his introduction to the Golden Dawn that gave Crowley his background in Egyptian religion and in the names of their gods. As we have seen in this previous chapter, he took those names to heart and they resurfaced in the book of law. And in the holy books, names such as Harpocrat, Ra-Har-Kahudi, and Themest, each which spellings are not found in popular works in Egyptology, make their way to Crowley's religion, as well as the concept of the equinox of the gods and the associated rotation of the divine officers throughout the year. But he also added a liberal dose of Greek and Roman concepts, as well as some Asian ideas. While the Golden Dawn had a few Asian-inspired documents, such as instructions concerning the tatwas, which are Indian elemental forms, and some basic yoga exercises. It was rather more focused on Western esoterica than Orientalia. This may be due to the example of the Theosophical Society, which began as a repository of Western occult and Hermetic ideas, but which rapidly switched its focus to India and to Buddhism and indigenous Indian religions. Normally grouped under the rubric Hinduism, Blavatsky's growing obsession with India and Tibet changed the characteristics of the Theosophical Society to such an extent that there was very little room for Hermetica or Western esoterica in general. Kabbalah was ignored, as well as ceremonial magic. These were areas that were picked up and developed to a greater degree by the Golden Dawn and its Masonic creators, thus filling a void that had been created by the Theosophical Society's abandonment of its Western esoteric roots. All right, so what I am going to do is I'll continue. Crowley therefore represented a bridge between both sciences. While his initiations and instruction in spirituality began with the Golden Dawn, he never really left the embrace of its initiatic structure. He did absorb some of the Asian techniques that were the focus of the Theosophical Society. He advocated practices such as pranayama, which is breath control, asana, yoga postures, and the attainment of samadhi, a higher state of consciousness reached through the intensive meditation, analogous to a non-dualist state of awareness in which subject and object are one. He recognized samadhi as an essential element of his own personal development and encouraged the pursuit of this enlightened state of consciousness among his followers. But this did not mean that he was a Buddhist or a Hindu by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, he broke with his good friend Alan Bennett over the issue. He was more than willing to take that what he could from the supermarket of religious ideas, but he was not loyal to any one brand. In this, perhaps, he was typical of the stereotypical New Ager, who is a spiritual, dilatant, dilettant, and who picks over ancient religious traditions like a shopper in a fruit and vegetable stand, but with one important and crucial difference. Unlike many of today's New Age spiritual seekers, Crowley did not skim the surfaces of the traditions. He investigated, but dived in completely. He had to know and experience what these traditions offered, and he subjected himself to strenuous physical and intellectual pursuit of this knowledge. The fact that he was at leisure for much of his early life due to an inheritance from his father's estate contributed to his ability to wander the world and devote himself to spiritual pursuits. He would incorporate significant amounts of these traditions into his own occult orders and into his religion of Thelema. And while we may argue about his selection or question that assumptions upon which some of the intellectual material is based, there can be no doubt that there was a strong element of sincerity in Crowley's approach. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to head down to Apocalypse Now. As mentioned, Crowley's first exposure to religion was in a Christian fundamentalist household, whose members belonged to the sect known as the Plymouth Brethren. Like many Protestant denominations with an extreme view of Scripture, this one placed an emphasis on the book of Revelation, also known as the Apocalypse. This is a controversial text dealing with the end of days and the final judgment. It is couched in esoteric symbolism more than any other biblical text and defies easy interpretation, but it is within its pages that we come across such famous concepts as the number of the beast, which is 666, as well as the beast himself and the whore of Babylon. It is a book that foretells the fall of Rome and or Jerusalem and a final cosmic battle between the forces of light and darkness. There are dragons, trumpets, and angels galore, and it is beyond the scope of this book to give a full and coherent description of its contents or to analyze its meaning. Gabriel's trumpet.
Yes, sir. Gabriel's trumpet, man.
Mm-hmm. Know what Gabriel's trumpet is?
Yes,
The
sir.
book of Revelation.
A good fart cleaned out my colon.
Yes, sir.
Gabriel's trumpet.
The book of Revelation virtually overshadows the rest of the New Testament due to its surreal cinematic imagery and its prophecies of doom. Those who focus on this text tend to neglect the message of the Gospels in favor of the more drastic condemnations of the church's enemies. One of these enemies is the beast. According to many theologians, this particular beast symbolizes Rome and the persecution of Christians by the Roman emperor. The number of the beast 666, but no further clarification of this number is given in the text. Some believe it is a coded reference to the Emperor Nero. In any event, that number has come to be a synonymous with evil incarnate and is frequently cited as the reference to the devil itself. 666, 6 protons, 6 neutrons, 6 electrons.
And you know, if we go to a book by Kenneth Grant, The Night Side of Eden, he breaks that 666 down into 2333s, and that's a very popular number. You see in a lot of movies and stuff, you see 333, and that is
Mm-hmm.
the number of, and it actually breaks down to the two beasts, because you know you have two beasts in Revelation, and the two beasts you have Chorazon, which is the mother, you have which her number is 333, and then you have Shugal, which is known as the desert fox, or basically which is no more than Set. Which so
Mm-hmm.
you know we talking about Typhonian knowledge here now. We ain't talking about no sun gazing Egyptian bullshit, man. We talking about the pre-pyramid builders that went down in the ground. So when you talk about putting 333 and 333 together, you get 666. That's the number of the beast. That's the mother and the child.
Yes,
You know
sir.
what I'm saying? And so
But but what
that's just another aspect though. But go ahead.
but what element is 666 representative of?
It is definitely it's definitely relevant to my understanding to the carbon, which is
Carbon.
666, which basically is no more than burnt down ash, and basically carbon is another form of, in its alter form is ether.
Mm-mm-mm.
And if you take ether, ether is the four elements combined: earth, wind, water, and fire.
You know, I remember the master teacher Bobby Hemmett said that carbon was nothing but another form of melanin.
Yeah, it is.
Carbon that makes your skin brown. Whether you're born with brown skin or you're born with a tan, or you can go out in the sun and you get a tan. You either have a lot of carbon or you have less carbon. So I'm guessing the ones that have the most carbon are known as the beasts of the book of Revelations.
Well, you know, and I don't. It's not just the carbon in the skin, because I mean that's part of it. But you know, you got melanin in the blood, you got melanin in the pineal gland. I mean, man, you got melanin all over your body and DNA. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
I mean, even the sickle cell in your blood, the T cells, the killer cell, man. That's. I mean, you know, if you want to get down to it, you start looking at in Hinduism. You look at Mahakala, who basically is no more than Father Time. You know, or you
Mm.
want to look at Father Time himself, or Kronos with the sickle. the children of Kronos, the children of Father Time, the children of going back to Egypt, which is when you look at pretty much Osiris, he was the Grim Reaper too. He had remember he was the black skeleton with the with the scythe, and basically,
Yes, sir.
so the children of Osiris have sickle cell. Now you tell me how many
Sickle
white people
cell.
out here got sickle cell?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we was Egyptians. I mean, it don't really matter. You are a subset of our genome. You have breeded yourself into a a particular recessive genome. You are children.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying?
All right.
But anyway, and I'm not saying that in a racist way, and I'm not saying in an angry way. You're not supposed to hate your children, but you're supposed to chastise them when they act up, and you're supposed to let them know the truth. And if when more people knew the truth, it was a whole lot better. But
Right.
now you got to the point where everybody's fighting with their egos, and it's not about saying I'm better than you. I'm just trying to explain who you are and who we are. You know. But anyway, we gonna carry on because you got some people gonna disagree with me, and I don't care. You can
That's
disagree all
okay.
you want because when the
That's
bottom line is when you take your last breath and you pee and poop your pants, that's the time when you gonna find out who knows what.
all right.
Yes,
You
sir.
heard it from the Mad Hatter himself, folks. All right. Okay. So we covered 666 and everything. So let's continue on our second paragraph on page 85. It is important to note that there are two beasts mentioned in Revelations. The first comes out of the sea, the abyss, and the second from out of the earth. They are each empowered by the dragon, to whom they evidently owe their allegiance. Thus, there is some confusion in Thelemic circles as to just what beast Crowley was referring to and why. Of course, he favored the 666 designation, making him the beast of the earth, known to readers of the Bible as the false prophet. Okay. All right. So we'll continue on our second sentence on the next paragraph. Crowley was able to show that the Greek term to mega therion, or the great beast, added up to 666 when using Greek numerology or gematria. Gematria is a system of numerology in which letters of the Greek or Hebrew alphabet equal numbers. When a word has the same numerical value as another word, then a relationship between them both is assumed to the extent that one word may clarify or justify the other. Okay. In fascination with gematria has bedeviled Thelema. For much of his existence to date, it became a focus of Frater Achard's symbol system and later of Kenneth Grant's analysis of Thelema, which would take gematria to near ridiculous lengths. The idea that the Bible contains coded information is central to Kabbalistic exegesis, as well as more recent textual analysis, such as the Bible Code and its heirs. It is by no means unique to Thelema. The fact that there are two beasts in Revelation plus one dragon begs the question that there be or have there been other contenders in Thelema for these available designations? Was there a human beast of the abyss? More importantly, perhaps, was there a physical, biological dragon in a Thelemic context? The answer to both of these questions has to be somewhat qualified no. Crowley was not taking the entire text of Revelation as a blueprint for his own religion, but only that section of it that he believed seemed to refer to himself. But one has to wonder if Crowley ever considered that there might be another human manifestation from Revelation. This will lead us to the example of Jack Parsons, who famously identified himself with the Antichrist. And we will take a look at that in another chapter. Why Crowley would identify himself with the devil is an important point, and which will lead us directly to the concept of the Dark Lord. For Crowley, the devil is something more ancient and more respectable than the caricature we've come across in the normative Christian imagery. The devil represents everything the church wants to suppress, and this includes most especially expressions of human sexuality. Crowley's view of Satanism and devil worshiper would have been colored by the continental obsession with the Black Mass. The famously blasphemes, which this ritual famously blasphemes the Catholic Mass, but in order to do so, makes use of sexual elements. Thus, a woman is used in the place of the altar. Coitus is performed on the woman in place of the transubstantiation of the bread and the wine. These are all the scandalous aspects of the Black Mass. And as it was popularly understood through such vehicles as J.K. Huysman's best-selling novel La Basse, or Down There. In this context, sexuality is transgressive. It is used to attack the church as its most delicate and important point. The sacrifice of the Mass itself, the central ritual of the faith that is normally celebrated by celibate priests, which we know they're not, Crowley would take up this theme in his own Catholic-inspired Gnostic Mass, in which the sexual elements are once again represented, albeit in a more sedate way than in the rapacious rituals of the 19th century French aesthetes. To Crowley, the restrictive attitudes of the church were themselves sinful, as it is written in the book of law. The word of sin is restriction. This is a subtle play on words, for the exact meaning of the term religion is derived from the Latin religio, itself probably derived from the verb legare, which means to bind, as the modern English ligature. The meaning of this sentence to the Thelemite is clear. It is religion that is sinful, religion that binds. Such restriction is anathema to a doctrine whose central affirmation of faith is do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Thus, Crowley, by identifying with the great enemy of the church, the B666, is aligning himself with the enemy of restriction, and therefore with the free expression of all forms of human sexuality. The ultimate example of sin and an important target of the Abrahamic religions. This is emphasized by the rest of the quote. All right, so we're on page 88, folks. So the word of sin is restriction. O man, refuse not thy wife, if she will. O lover, if thou wilt, depart. There is no bond that can unite the divided, but love, all else is a curse. Accursed, be it to the Aeons. So did Crowley just say, if you ain't giving up nothing, you need to go?
You forgot to put hell on the end of that. But anyway.
Oh yeah, I forgot to put hell. My bad. Sorry about that.
Yeah, but that's all good.
Yeah.
I think people still get the understanding that you're trying to get across to them. One thing I don't know if they mentioned it in this book here, because we read a lot of these different things, on our journey we had before, and just so that people understand, this is what we used to do in our own private Gnostic sessions of reading and studying together, and sometimes, uh, you know, conscious discernment would be at my house, man, and we'd be sitting up in there, or actually the trailer I was in, and we'd be sitting up in there, man, and I'd be like tired, and I'd be like, man, I'm tired of hearing this dude talk and read, man. But we really had a lot of breakthroughs in that little Yoda net rat nest we were in. You know what I'm saying?
We did.
Sitting down eating chicken bog, man, and barbecue chicken and all kind of stuff,
It's,
man. Uh,
frog legs.
Man, all kind of fried up stuff, man. Yeah, we in the
Oh.
South, man. You know what I'm saying? Y'all can turn up
Mm-hmm.
your nose, but you eat a chicken, man, which is eat chicken, one of the nastiest animals out there. I remember when I
Yes,
was a
sir.
kid, I used to come, when I didn't live here, I'd come down to my grandfather's house, and the chickens would be out there in the yard, and I'd spit on the ground. The chickens would be fighting to eat it up. Chicken nasty,
Mm.
man. You can throw chickens
Mm-hmm.
that eat a dead chicken up. So I mean, and you eating stuff out these stores, you don't know what you eating. So I'm just saying, this whole place is hell. It got all the meat got parasites in it, man. The fruit, everything you eat got something nasty in it. So you trying to be so nice nasty, and your ass full of worms right now, don't even know it, and
Yes,
full of
sir.
parasites and germs. So maybe you need to stop taking yourselves too serious, man, down here. About, oh, that's nasty. I don't do this. I don't do that. You one of the nastiest things walking around on this planet. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
The
My
name of
lord.
Earth is dirt.
Mm.
So, but anyway, what I was gonna say about the mass, they said that Crowley used the woman as the altar. But one of the things I remember recalling is that not only would they have you have sexual intercourse and stuff. I mean, the woman from if I remember right now, the woman could be on her period, man, and be mixing that along with her secretions, and and I've even heard them making wafers out of this stuff and them eating it.
My goodness.
Yes, sir. Like I said, now
Mm.
we sitting down here looking at the gnosis. By no means are we sitting down here co-signing with some of the
Right.
things that he did, because
Yes.
I ain't trying to eat no cum blood wafer. You know what I'm saying?
You don't want to eat no minstrel wafers.
No, sir. And I ain't and
No,
I ain't
sir.
trying and I ain't trying to eat no nut out the eye of Horus. And for those who don't know, the eye, and that's something I'm jumping ahead a little bit. But not only
Hmm.
is the eye of Horus known to be the anal cavity, it also can be the opening in the penis.
Yes,
That
sir. But
is known.
we'll
That
get
has
there.
been known as an eye of Horus as well. So y'all sit out here and be talking about, yeah, man, I'm the most high and all this. I know about this and that and reading all this stuff, man. Look, let me tell you something, man. There's so many different variations on this gnosis. And it gets sicker and deeper as you get
Yes,
into it.
sir.
You
Very
know,
sick and deep.
and the thing you got to understand is that this God, or I don't even like saying God or devil, because I see them as being two sides of the same coin. I see them as being the polarities. I see them as being Iron Samuel. I see them basically as being the split, of the creator. So I like to say the creator. The creator's a sick motherfucker, man.
Yes, sir. But when we talking about that our horse, folks, is just around the corner. So just
Yeah.
stay with us.
All right. All
Stay
right.
with us. All right. So we're gonna continue at the top of page 88 of Peter Levenda's The Dark Lord. All right. This emphasis on love rather than the law as the touchstone for human relationships is one element of the Thelema that sets it apart from mainstream religion. When love goes according to the verse, then so should the lover. This disassociates the act of love from legal considerations, whether of religion or of secular government. It is most especially given the context an attack on the sacrament of matrimony and on religiously sanctioned marriage. If marriage is subtracted from the equation, what is left? Either pure eros, sexuality as a form of human relationship, or something even deeper, a relationship based not only on sexuality, popularly understood, but on emotional attraction and the attachment, the way many adolescents experience it, without a legal or religious context. Something approaching Jungian ideas of archetypes, or Freudian ideas of repressed erotic feelings for one's partner. As Crowley himself is known to have had both male and female lovers, married and unmarried, this seems consistent with his worldview, but it is inconsistent with the mainstream religions of his time. And he would be moved to see in the beast a force of resistance against the structures of the establishment and the status quo, because he perceived them as obstacles to a fuller knowledge of the self. It is the tension between the self and community, particularly in the sphere of sexuality and human relationships. That is the focal point of Thelema, at least as understood by some of its most prominent apologists, such as Kenneth Grant. It is also the point at which Lovecraft balks, pointing to the transgressive magician and sorcerer as the cause of the community's vulnerability to forces from outside. All right. By identifying himself in a positive way with the beast, Crowley was performing a kind of self therapy. He was taking the suppressed and repressed elements of a personality that had been molded by a normative and restrictive Christian sect and liberating them by means of recharacterizing them as positive values and not negative impulses. It was perhaps more important for Crowley to self identify this way than it was for his followers, for whom the beast of the book of Revelation might be less powerful, even confusing associations. It marked his independence from Christian and hence English society, and its expectations from Christian from of conformity. Sorry about that. It was dramatic, certainly, especially for the time, but was there more substance to the image than that? The answer to that question must visit another powerful image of the book of Revelation, the whore of Babylon. This personality is as complex and mysterious as the beast. It is obviously a coded reference that made a lot of sense at the time. And in the millennia since the book of Revelation was written, there have been numerous attempts to analyze and identify the whore in contemporary context. Where Crowley was concerned, the whore of Babylon could only be a reference to his consort, of whom he had quite a series that he called the Scarlet Woman. In the book of Revelation, the whore of Babylon is referred to as Babylon the Great, mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Revelation 17:3-6. Babylon was a reference to the alien culture that had crushed the Israelites and destroyed Solomon's temple, and which thus became a code word for the Roman Empire that was the object of scorn of the writers of Revelations. All right, on to page 90, folks. Peter Levenda's The Dark Lord. Like Rome, Babylon was viewed as an evil empire, bent on destroying God's people. At the time the book of Revelation was being written, about the first century, the land of Israel was under Roman domination. Both Christians at the time, little more than a Jewish sect, and Jews were being persecuted as a result of their refusal to obey the edicts of Emperor
Dominion.
Domitian, who demanded that everyone in his empire worship him as a god or be executed. The whore of Babylon is depicted as wearing purple and scarlet robes and holding a golden cup filled with the abominations and filthiness of her fornication. She sat on a scarlet beast with 7 heads and 10 horns and was drunk on the blood of saints and martyrs. Purple was the color of Roman royalty and was forbidden to the average citizen. So its inclusion here is instructive. Crowley's incorporated this personality. One is hard pressed to refer to her as a god, but at least not in her biblical persona. Into his religion as the personification of the female principle of the universe as Shakti, the female partner to the beast, who represents the male principle, or Shiva in Hinduism. The cup of abominations is an analogy of the commingled male and female essences that are known as Amrita in the East. And just as in Revelation, the beast was subordinate to the dragon. In Crowley's theological structure, the beast is subordinate to other powers. In order to clarify these admittedly bizarre relationships, it is worthwhile to have recourse to the Thelemic Creed as offered in the Liturgy of the Gnostic Mass written by Crowley. And here we go, folks. I believe in one secret, in ineffable Lord, and in one star, in the company of stars, of whose fire we are created, and to which we shall return, and in one Father of life, mystery of mystery, in his name, chaos, the soul, viceregent of the sun upon earth, and in one air, the nourisher of all that breathes. And I believe in one earth, the mother of us all, and in one womb, wherein all men are begotten, and wherein they shall rest. Mystery of mystery, in her name, Babylon. And I believe in the serpent and the lion, mystery of mystery, in his name, Baphomet. And I believe in one Gnostic and Catholic church of light, life, love, and liberty. The word of those law is Thelema. And I believe in the communion of saints. And for as much as meat and drink are transmuted in us daily into spiritual substance, I believe in the miracle of the Mass. And I confess one baptism of wisdom, whereby we accomplish the miracle of incarnation. And I confess my one life, individual and eternal, that was and is to come. All right. So,
you know, as being brought up in the Catholic Church as a child, and you know, I mean, we were from the hood, we were from the ghetto, man. So you know, all that stuff we hear about them priests doing, they ain't did that with us because we were street smart. You know what I mean? I mean, we was gang affiliated even, man. We got to a certain age, you know, so we wasn't playing that, man. So we never had that experience. But what I'm saying is, by listening to this, I can see where it's basically he's to me now. It appears that he's in this competition of being the mirror version of the Catholic Church. I mean, which they pretty much said, you know, he's kind of wanting to be the counterpart to the Catholic Church because he sees the Catholic Church as being deceptive, and he's trying to bring out the the opposite side that they're trying to suppress. But when I look at this, I'm just saying this. I'm not trying to piss nobody off. It sounds like the approach is coming from the approach of a lot of the the um the ideologies are coming from the root chakra, because it's all about sex, you know. And I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying sex is a bad thing, because it's necessary, but you staying in the lower root chakras. You know what I'm saying? And the
Mm-hmm.
three lower chakras, and we not dealing in the higher chakras, or
Yes.
the higher essence of your seven main nerves in your spiritual body. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Have you noticed that so far?
Yes, sir. That's what it's about so far. But it's going to get very interesting because we are going to be getting into one of the gods who represent the root chakra. So
Let's go.
just hang on there, folks. Just hang on. All right. Because it's about to get really good. I'm telling you, folks, it's about to get really good. And I know we've been in here over an hour tonight, but I'm going to tell you, it's about to get really good for a lot of, the hotepers out there. Shout out to y'all, but it's about to get really good.
Yeah, because
Readers,
and in this we haven't talked about it a lot, but they keep talking about chaos in here. And also, even when they talk about Babylon, you remember Bobby Hemmett was talking about baby lion, or Baba, which means black, which all goes back to the melanin. But I ain't trying to jump too far here. Keep on going where you're going.
all right. Readers who were brought up Roman Catholic, like the present author, may be forgiven if they recognize what seems to be a travesty of the Apostles' Creed of their youth. The basic formula is the same. I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. I believe in Jesus Christ, his only Son, our Lord. He was conceived by the power of the Holy Spirit and born of the Virgin Mary, which we covered already earlier, folks. It was so much that she had to conceive. He suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, died, and was buried. He descended to the dead. On the third day, he rose again. He ascended into heaven and is seated at the right hand of the Father. He will come again to judge the living and the dead. I believe in the Holy Spirit, the Holy Catholic Church, the communion of saints, the forgiveness of sins, the resurrection of the body, and life everlasting. Amen. All right, folks. So page 92. This is about to get really good. In both versions, Thelemic and Roman Catholic, the emphasis in the first lines is on a profession of faith in a creator God, termed a father. That's Big Daddy, folks.
Big Daddy.
That Big Daddy, baby. That this is different from the ineffable Lord in the Thelemic Creed seems clear from the text. Here is very important. This is very important. Here, the Father is the Father of life and is the vice regent of the Son on earth. And somewhat disconcertingly, perhaps, his name is Chaos. Chaos was indeed one of the appellations of the Egyptian god Set, and he is referred to as such in the Greek magical papyri. A god with the name Chaos would not be a reference to Osiris or Horus or Thoth or Ra or any of the more popular deities. Chaos is associated in Egypt and in the Near and Middle East of the period, first century at the latest, with Set and with Set Typhon. And the star to which the creed refers could only be for Grant and the Typhonians, the pole star. that northern star, Polaris,
Yes, sir.
with it with its 7 circumpolar attendants, which is known as the Big Dipper, or as it was known in Egypt as the Thigh of Set. The very important statement concerning one star in the company of stars of whose fire we are created, and to which we shall return, implies the extraterrestrial origins of humanity, and by extension, its ultimate destination. This star has been identified as the Sun, of whom the Father is the sole viceregent. But I believe this is a blind, as were the 7 planets in Mithraism. For the real sun, which is the immortal pole star, Polaris, a sun that never rises or sets, but which sits unmoving directly overhead. Never
That's why I
moves,
say
folks.
these sun. That's why I say these sun gods is a fucking psyop. But go ahead.
Yes, sir. The name chaos has been interpreted to mean air and gas. The first statement of the Thelemic Creed ends with air, the nourisher of all that breathes, and is thus connected with chaos, the star, and the Father. The very next uh, doctrinal statement in the Creed identifies Babylon as the mother of us all and as the earth itself. We therefore have the sky and the earth, air and earth, chaos and Babylon as the first divinities enumerated in the Creed. This is followed by Baphomet, which was Crowley's name in the OTO. Thus, we have 2 gods, chaos and Babylon, followed by the name of the prophet of the new Aeon, Baphomet or Crowley himself. This requires us to look more closely at Babylon since Crowley was fixated on her and what she represented, clarifying that his succession of female magical partners, the Scarlet Woman, were but avatars for Babylon. The 3 Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, I self, Lord and Master,
Yes, sir.
Allah, arm, leg,
Leg,
arm,
leg,
head,
arm, head.
Allah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Do not elevate the female principle to the level of divinity. For that reason, they are often referred to as patriarchal religions. From the previous chapter, we remember that Crowley, like some of the anthropologists of his day, believed that the patriarchal era was preceded by a matriarchal one. While this theory has largely been disproved on the basis of archaeological and other evidence, it nonetheless remains a strong concept among those professing a New Age worldview. One is tempted to imagine what the world would look like if matriarchal as opposed to patriarchal religions were the dominant force in the West. In the East, however, women and female representations of Godhead are more common. In India, goddesses are of supreme importance, especially among specific sects that worship Kali, Durga, Shakti, etc. In China, among the Taoists and the Buddhists, Kuan Yin is an extremely important goddess and is believed to be the Chinese version of the Indian Avalokitesvara, the male god of compassion. Even in predominantly Muslim Indonesia, the goddesses Sri, Lara Kadul, and Durga are still important and still reverenced. The Thelemic documents, including the Book of the Law, and the Gnostic Mass reveal the desire to reinstate awareness of the feminine aspect of divinity. Conscious that this is an antinomian position to take. The feminine aspect that is most identified and cherished is that of the whore of Babylon, perhaps the most transgressive female image in all of Christendom. As Gail Corrington Street had discussed at some length, the whore of Babylon is but one iteration of the foreign woman of the Bible, the seducer of Israel, who tries to tempt men away from the true faith. But the foreign woman is also the queen of Sheba, who tempted Solomon himself with the worship of foreign gods. She is Jezebel, and so many other strong yet strange women in the Bible who represent not only women in general, but ideas related to foreignness, to the alien and to the other. Like Set, Babylon is a foreign deity. Set may represent ideas of masculine or male chaos, where Babylon represents the feminine or female aspect of chaos. They are the yin and the yang and yin, respectively, of every antinomian in unorthodox belief and practice. But there is another possible motive for this idealization of the whore of Babylon, and it may rest in the sexual mysteries themselves, the ones that Crowley learned from the OTO and Carl Kellner and Theodore Roos, which placed an emphasis on the mingling of both male and female sexual secretions. This sex magic at the heart of the OTO mysteries is what has been elaborated upon at great length by Kenneth Grant, and its forms the initiatic process of the Typhonian Current. In this context, a whore is a sexually promiscuous woman, a woman who has sex for money or other favors, and as such is a threat to other women because of the implied devaluation of sexual intimacy between husband and wife. The characterization of sexuality as a biological function that can be bought and sold like food or water or manual labor, rather than as the seal of an emotional and spiritual contract. The whore exists outside of the community of married men and women, of householders and upholders of the government, the church, and even of consensus reality. The relationship with the prostitute is a secret relationship. Few men boast of going to prostitutes or having any sort of relationship with them outside of the sex act. In fact, the more established a man is, the more respected in his community, his government, his religion, his business, the less likely he is to admit to such a relationship in the public forum. He may go to great lengths to conceal it, to keep it a secret, hidden, or entirely personal. It is, in a sense, an esoteric or occult relationship. In the book of Revelations, the whore of Babylon represents not only the ultimate prostitute and sexually active woman, but also signifies an enemy of the church. It is the dual role that she is important to Thelema. For even as sexual mores have changed considerably since the Victorian era when Crowley was a youth, church and the state are still viable targets for a religion of liberation and freedom. There is one more aspect of the whore of Babylon that must be considered, and that is her stated origin, Babylon. The implication is clear, a connection, however, tenuous not to Egypt, but to Sumer. Akkad and Babylon itself, the whore of Babylon, to use Crowley's spelling base on his rendering of the name to satisfy a gematria of his own, is thereby a link to the most ancient of the known Western religions, the one that is the focus of Grant's work, and that is referenced by Crowley, Parsons, and other Thelemic authors and personalities, and enshrined in the Slangcraft recension of the Necronomicon, the Sumerian tradition. While Crowley's fixation on the beast and the whore of Babylon, the whore of the Christian Bible, may have been motivated originally by a desire to be a bad boy and outrage the adults around him, the adolescent fantasy of transgression became enshrined in a doctrine. The whore was lifted out of its biblical context and reimagined as the mother of us all, and as a Mesopotamian deity, as was Awas. It should be acknowledged, however, that this theme of transgression applies not only to the Christianity of the book of Revelation, but because of the destruction of Solomon's temple by the Babylonians, to Judaism as well. Crowley's alleged anti-Semitism has been the subject of several investigations, and we won't belabor the point here. It may be sufficient to state that Crowley's philosophy was deliberately provocative and anti-establishment in nature, to the extent that he ridiculed most human institutions and therefore treated most people with contempt if they were not converts to his new faith. This might not have been the result of deep feelings of genuine racism, sexism, etc., but was rather what one would expect of someone who set himself up as the prophet of a new age, much in the same way that Moses and his followers rained death on their enemies, or the church in its many inquisitorial purges and crusades, or the anti-Semitic remarks that can be found in the Quran, and the military actions that took place against non-Muslims during the Prophet's life, and those of subsequent caliphates. This is not to say one should enshrine these ill-advised declarations as statements of doctrinal authority. However, they need interpreting. Yet, a key point of contention in this case is that no one is supposed to interpret Crowley's writings but Crowley himself. This is one of the inherent contradictions in Thelema. For a while, Crowley insisted that he be the arbiter of all things Thelemic. His slogan was quite different. Our method is science. Our aim is religion. The hour is understood not as the editorial or papal first person plural, but in encompassing all Thelemites. If the scientific method is indeed the cornerstone of Crowley's occult praxis, then it behooves Thelemites to undertake independent experimentation and discovery. This is precisely what the late Kenneth Grant set out to do. And in the process, he made some interesting and possible crucial discoveries. Among these was the value of the different sets of God forms from different cultures, in particularly those with which Crowley himself was not as familiar. While his incorporation of genuine Tantric and Afro-Caribbean data makes his writings worthwhile for anyone interested in what an expansion of Crowley's basic themes would look like, and in particularly Crowley's magic, it is Grant's willingness to look beyond religion and spiritual techniques to other sources of information that place the British occultists upon an entirely different plateau. All right, so what we'll do is we'll go down to the beast in the cave on page 97.
And you know, Grant is one of my cultists that I like, you know, somewhat for the knowledge, you know, that Typhonian knowledge. Because like I said before, I know we're about to go down here. A lot of people are caught up in these sun deities, but as you can see, these moon deities and these night deities, you know what I'm saying, that pre-existed before them. You know what I mean? A lot of people don't even know nothing about it. A lot of these white people out here talking about they was Egyptians. Let them be them son Egyptians if that's what they want to be. You know what I'm saying? And what good is it gonna do them? What good is it gonna do to other people if they don't know the truth? We chaos beings. And you can fake the funk all you wanna, but when it come time, if you don't, let me put it like this here: if you ain't got the key, you ain't getting in. Period. But let's take it on down to the beast in the cave, because that's when you get down to you. You know,
Yes,
that's
sir.
when you get to that when you talk about you got to go within. That's when you go to meet that beast in the cave. You're going to meet yourself. When I met the Almighty, I found out the damn Almighty was me.
Mm-mm-mm.
I was shocked to find
All
out that
right.
the Most High was me.
Well, let's go into this cave and meet ourselves.
Let's go in there and meet ourselves.
The Beast in the Cave. In 1907, Crowley was writing some of the works that became seminal to the doctrines of Thelema, known as the Holy Books. These include Liber Labiri, Bel Lapidus Lazuli, Liber Cordis Centin, Serpiente, and other works written between October 30th and November 1st of that year, and Liber Acrenorum, and Liber Car- Go ahead.
Libra Arcanorum.
Arcanorum, and Liber Carcerorum, written between December 5th and 14th that same year. Lovecraft would have had no knowledge of this, as he was only a 17-year-old reclusive living at home on Angel Street in Providence, Rhode Island, dreaming of the stars. Instead, he later would write of an orgiastic ritual taking place that year in the bayous outside New Orleans, Louisiana. And on the very same day that Crowley was writing the books enumerated above, the story
Can I stop?
Lovecraft wrote. Mhm.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
The story Lovecraft wrote is entitled The Call of Cthulhu and is arguably his most famous work. He wrote the story in 1926 in late August or early September, but placed the action in New Orleans in 1907 and later in Providence in 1925. How was this relevant? Lovecraft's placement of the orgiastic ritual in honor of the high priest of the great old ones, Cthulhu, and the discovery of a statue of Cthulhu by the New Orleans police on Halloween 1907 coincides precisely with Crowley's fevered writing of his own Gothic prose. In the Liber Liberi vel Lapidus Lazuli, for instance, Crowley writes the word Cthulhu for the first time. He claims not to know what this word means or where it came from, as the name of Lovecraft's fictional alien god can be pronounced Cthulhu. It seems more coincidental, as Kenneth Grant himself noted. In Crowley's Liber Cordis Senti Serpiente, or the Book of the Heart Girth with a Serpent, there are numerous references to the abyss of the great deep, to Typhon, Python, and the appearance of an old gnarled fish with tentacles. All descriptions that match Lovecraft's imagined Cthulhu perfectly, not approximately, but perfectly. Crowley's volume was written on November 1st, 1907. The ritual for Cthulhu in New Orleans took place on the same day, month, and year. Here are the relevant passages from Liber Liberi vel Lapidus Lazuli. By the burning of the incense was the word revealed, and by the distant drug. old metal and honey and oiled. O beautiful flag of the moon that she hangs out in the center of bliss. These loosen the swathings of the corpse. These unbind the feet of Osiris, so that the flaming god may rage through the firmament with his fantastic spear. There we go with that firmament. But of pure black marble is the sorry statue, and the changeless pain of the eyes is bitter to the blind. We understand the rapture of that shaken marble, torn by the throes of the crowned child, the golden rod of the golden god. We know why all is hidden in the stone, within the coffin, within the mighty sepulchre. And we too answer Olalam, Imal, Tutulu, as it is written in the ancient book. 3 words of that book are as life to a new Aeon. No god has read the whole, but thou and I, O God, have written it page by page. And in Lapidus Cordis Sinti Serpiente, then was the adept glad, and lifted his arm. Lo, an earthquake and plague and terror on the earth. And behold, the abyss of the great deep. Therein is a mighty dolphin, lashing his sides with the force of the waves. And thou art Sebek, the crocodile against Asar, which is Osiris. Thou art Mati, the slayer in the deep. Thou art Typhon, the wrath of the elements. O thou who transcendents the forces in their concourse and cohesion, in their death and their disruption. Thou art Python, the terrible serpent, and the end of all things. And finally, I trembled at thy coming, O my Lord, O thy messenger, for thy messenger was more terrible than the Death Star. On the threshold stood the fulminant figure of evil, the horror of emptiness, with his ghastly eyes like poisonous wells. He stood, and the chamber was corrupt. The air stank. He was an old and gnarled fish, more hideous than the shells of Abaddon. He enveloped me with his demon tentacles. Yeah, the 8 fears took hold upon me.
Cthulhu.
Cthulhu, there he is. Compare with the relevant passages from Lovecraft's Call of Cthulhu. In these apparent hieroglyphics was a figure of evident pictorial intent, though its impressionistic execution forbade a very clear idea of its nature. It seemed to be a sort of monster or symbol representing a monster of a form which only a deceased fancy could conceive. If I say that may somewhat extravagant imagination yield simultaneous pictures of an octopus, a dragon, and a human caricature, I shall not be unfaithful to the spirit of the thing. A pulpy tentacled head surmounted a grotesque and scaly body with rudimentary wings, but it was the general outline of the whole which made it most shockingly frightful. Behind the figure was a vague suggestion of a cyclopean architectural background. And the figure, which was finally passed slowly from man to man for close and careful study, was between 7 and 8 inches in height and of exquisitely artistic workmanship. It represented a monster of vaguely anthropoid outline, but with an octopus-like head, whose face was a mass of feelers, a scaly, rubbery-looking body, Prodigious claws on hind and fore feet, and long, narrow wings behind. This thing, which seemed instinct with a fearsome and unnatural malignance, malig- uh,
Religion.
malign- malignancy, malignancy was of somewhat bloated corpulence, and squatted evilly on a rectangular block or pedestal covered with undecipherable characters. The tips of the wings touched the back edge of the block. The seat occupied the center, whilst the long curved claws of the doubled up, crouching hind legs gripped the front edge and extended a quarter of the way down toward the bottom of the pedestal. The cephalopod head was bent forward so that the ends of the facial feelers brushed the backs of huge forepaws, which clasped the croucher's elevated knees. The aspect of the whole was abnormally lifelike, and the more subtly feared because its source was so totally unknown. Its vast, awesome, and incalculable age was unmistakable. Yet, not one link did it shew with any known type of art belonging to civilization's youth, or indeed to any other time, totally separate and apart. Its very material was a mystery, for the soapy, greenish black stone with the golden and iridescent, iridescent flecks and stri-
Striation.
striations striations resembled nothing familiar to geology or mineralogy. The characters along the base were equally baffling, and no member present, despite a representation of half the experts, e- world's expert learning in this field, conform the least notion of even their remotest linguistic kinship. Just hang on, folks, because it's getting ready to get really good going into this next paragraph. Because we're getting ready to go ahead in with the Hotepas out there.
Yes, sir.
In in Liber Liberivel Lapidus Lazuli, Crowley refers to several of the images which Lovecraft would be consumed in his stories, but especially in the Call of Cthulhu. Here we have a buried god that is awakened from a stone in a coffin, in a
Temperature.
sepulture, a mysterious words written in an ancient book, including Cthulhu, and of pure black marble is the sorry statue, resonates with the black stone on which the statue of Cthulhu squats. In Liber Cordis Senti Serpiente, we have an expansion of this theme. Beginning with an earthquake, Lovecraft's story is centered around an actual earthquake that took place in 1925, and extending to the abyss of the great deep, the slayer in the deep, a Death Star, and the fulminant figure of evil, a stinking fish-like creature with tentacles. This figure is a messenger of the gods, and indeed Cthulhu is not only a god itself, but a high priest of the great old ones, who will return to earth when the stars are right. A more paranoid observer than your author may wonder if the statement in Liber of Aleister Crowley, every man and every woman is a star, is a decoding of the famous Lovecraft quotation, when the stars are right. On to page 102, folks. It would imply that when the followers of Thelema, the stars are powerful enough or numerous enough, then the great old ones will return. This is very important, this paragraph.
And I'm one of the great old ones. Y'all can believe it if you want to. I don't give a fuck.
Yes,
Go
sir.
ahead.
So
That's why I'm here.
this was certainly this was certainly Crowley's objective as understood by Grant and as revealed by these excerpts from Crowley's Holy Books of Thelema. Crowley believed that the first two books mentioned above were not his writing, but were inspired works dictated to him by his holy guardian angel, the ancient Sumerian personality Aiwass. After Crowley had attained samadhi during a course of rituals he undertook with his colleague, George Cecil Jones in England, even the undecipherable language of Olalam Imal
Imal.
Tutulu has its counterpart in the enigmatic hieroglyphics of the Cthulhu statue of the ecstatic glossolalia like cries of the worshippers in the Louisiana swamps. Both men, the American author and the English magician, were dealing with the same subject matter, and indeed, Lovecraft had dated the first appearance of the Cthulhu statue to the same year, month, and day that Crowley began writing these sections of the holy books. So now you got somebody who was 17 when Crowley was writing this, but when he came up with his story, he didn't know nothing about Crowley, and everything that he write coincides with the days that Crowley writes these books.
And you talk about Bobby Hemmett. He was saying Crowley was claiming that he was, but
Mm-hmm.
he said that he was a slave to Aeon. And you
Right.
understand when he was on his deathbed, they said that pretty much he was like, man, something wrong here, man. This can't be right, or something of that nature. Because I'm gonna tell you, man, you can play around with Cthulhu, and you can play around with that melanin, and you can play around with this energy that's us, man. But if you ain't with it, you gonna.
All right, folks. Well, I would have to wait for the Mad Hatter to join us again. It looks like he probably logged off, but I'll continue here for us tonight. Okay, so there is no hard evidence that either man knew of the other, although the author believes that references to an English Satanist in Lovecraft's The Thing on the Doorstep could be an allusion to Crowley. In any event, to suggest that these two men cooperated or collaborated in any deliberate way would be the height or depth of conspiracy theory. It may actually be more logical to grant, right? Really quick. Actually logical to suggest that as an explanation for some of these coincidences that darker forces were at work. In fact, it is possible that the same forces of which Lovecraft himself writes, the telepathic communication between followers of Cthulhu and the Great Old Ones, was what prompted him to write these fictional accounts of real events. Either Lovecraft was in some kind of telepathic communication with Crowley, or both men were in telepathic communication with something else. The Dark Lord. All right. Let me.
Man,
Yeah, you good. I'm on page 103
yeah,
at
I
the
got
top.
disconnected, man.
Yeah, you good. All right. In fact, it is possible that the same forces of which Lovecraft himself writes the telepathic communications between followers of Cthulhu and the Great Old Ones was prompted him to write these fictional accounts of real events. Either Lovecraft was in some kind of telepathic communication with Crowley, or both men were in telepathic communication with something else. All right. So, this Dark Lord of the Holy Books is one of the gods, perhaps the most important god, and of the Crowley pantheon in the in the Crowley in the Crowley line of succession. This god is at the juncture of Egyptian and Sumerian religion and is thus pre-Judaic. In Lovecraft's Secession, Cthulhu is a high priest of the Great Old Ones who came to the planet from the stars aeons ago, long before humans walked the earth. Although dead and buried deep beneath the earth or under the ocean, he can rise again once the stars are right, and his followers assist in calling him up and resurrecting him. This leads us to a slight detour into Tibetan language. The word Kusulu
Yes,
in
sir.
Tibetan evokes for us another coincidence, for it refers to a shaman, a kind of priest, but also to one who was once dead, but who has come back from death. This meme, the shaman who has come back from the dead, is a perfect description of Lovecraft's Cthulhu and may provide means of understanding Crowley's Cthulhu as well. According to Kenneth Grant, one possible translation of the word Cthulhu can be who will attain. These are all consistent with the idea presented by Lovecraft and a high priest of the Great Old Ones, dead but dreaming, who will resurrect from his watery grave to take charge of the earth once more. As noted in the Slangcraft recension of the Necronomicon, Cthulhu can be rendered in the Sumerian language as Kutu-Lu, or the man from Kutu, or the man from the underworld. Kutu, the biblical Gudua, sometimes rendered Kutu or Kuta, was the ancient city of Kuta, sacred to Nergal and the entrance to the underworld in Sumerian religion. It was also the city in Mesopotamia with special reverence for Islam, for it was the city where the Quraysh
Perish.
were from. The Quraysh are, of course, the tribe of the Prophet Muhammad, the tribe in charge of the pagan shrine in Mecca known as the Kaaba, or the Black Stone. This was the
Oh,
shrine containing.
can we stop there 1 second? The black
We can.
stone actually is the pineal gland or the damn melanin in it. That's what it is. And ka and the ba, the body and the soul. You know what I'm saying? And when I look at the
Mm,
watery grave, what is your body 70% of? And your brain and you suspended in water. And when you wake up,
mhm.
you waking up from a water grave. But let's move on.
So, all right. The
You have
this
the black
was
stone.
yeah
This was go ahead.
this was the shrine containing 360 idols, probably of the moon god Ubal, that the prophet dismantled and replaced with the shrine sacred to his new religion of Islam. The death and rebirth theme that is central to Siberian shamanism was also a crucial element of Sumerian and Babylonian religion. The famous narrative of the descent of the Sumerian goddess Inanna, Ishtar, or Easter, into the underworld and her rescue and resurrection 3 days later is one of the legends that helped form the Sumerian Gnosis. Indeed, she has sometimes been identified with the whore of Babylon. When she finally ascended the 7 levels of the underworld to reappear in the world, she was accompanied by a host of demons who had previously been restrained in the underworld and who took advantage of her defeat of death to flood out of their subterranean prison and populate the earth. This bears some resemblance to Lovecraft's fictional Cthulhu, who is dead, but who will be reborn. When the stars are right and at that time bring his alien gods to the earth to rule it once more. In both cases, the Lovecraft scenario and the Sumerian prototype, the dead require assistance of the living to effect the resurrection. This complex narrative is reprised to the Christian example of Jesus, who after his crucifixion descended into hell and rose on the third day. His descent into hell was for a purpose of releasing from the underworld all those noble souls who had died before he appeared on the earth to redeem humanity from original sin. In the Christian case, the souls were released were those of the righteous dead. In the Sumerian case, the souls that were released were demonic forces, which was thousands of years before Christianity, folks. In
Which
the
to me is the same
Lovecraft,
thing. Those are the real righteous souls.
yes.
The demons or Damians. But go ahead.
In the Lovecraft scenario, the gates are opened to hideous alien beings from outer space. Either the Christian case is mere wishful thinking or a deliberate gloss on the older traditions of the region, or is it something else? Much has been written in the past 100 years or longer on the subject of the dead and resurrected God, referencing a whole category of such deities ranging from Osiris to Tammuz, Mithra, and others in the Middle East and North Africa. It is often characterized as evidence of an agricultural society in which seeds are planted, buried in the ground, and then resurrected in the form of new plants. However, this process could just as easily be the basis for any of a number of sexually oriented fertility cults as well, and not necessarily the basis for a dead resurrected god or goddess, as in the case of Inanna. Unless, of course, there is a relation of connection between the idea of death and resurrection on the one hand, and sexual intercourse and reproduction on the other. In the Gnostic Mass, as revised by Crowley, we have the template of a celebration of Christ's Last Supper and the consumption of his flesh and blood by the faithful over, which is applied the sexual components of Crowley's cultus. While the sexual aspect of the Gnostic Mass is the most obvious one and the aspect that gets all the attention, the death and resurrection foundation of the Mass is still present and is in disguise. Crowley might have said that his Mass was the reveal of the innate sexual message of the original Mass. While the original Mass can be interpreted as the reveal of the primary death and resurrection message behind within the Crowley version, they can be seen as mirror images of each other. If one views them both from an angle slightly off center, from, as Lovecraft would say, a space between the spaces. Also, I put some notes down from maybe 6 or 7 years ago. Those demons could be personified as activated melanin as well.
And you know that's where the number 144 come. You hear people talking about 144,000.
Mm-hmm.
And basically,
Activated
what that
melanin.
is, when you got my understanding, you got the seven chakras, and when you well, I don't want to get wrong here because man, I have been through so much information over these years, but I'm thinking when you take those seven chakras and you multiply them by the amount of sub chakras or what we call demons in them, when you add them all together, it comes up to be 144,000. Where people take all this, we have fell into ignorance. You know what I'm saying? Because the original that's the divine plan. The divine plan was for us to fall into ignorance. You playing a game of hide and go seek with yourself. I mean, when you realize that you are the Almighty man living for eternity, what the hell else you gonna do when you live for eternity? You know what I'm saying? Most people ain't gonna get on this level. Most people not gonna understand what I'm saying. But when you understand that you are of the Almighty, you might just be one particular, you might just be one particular essence in an avatar. But just like in your body, if somebody was to cut your damn toe off, you'd feel it. It's still you. So I'm saying, basically, the Almighty is living through all of us. And basically, when you recognize yourself, then you become a child again, and that's being reborn, because you being reborn, and now you're learning how to be the Almighty, recognizing yourself. And to me, this is crazy, because a lot of people look at the vesicle Pisces as being a woman's vagina, but I see that as being the area where the two circles of the spirit world and the physical world overlap, and you have that vagina looking thing, which is a portal that you come through. Now, when you come through here, you can be dead and you can identify with the world as the human. Or when you become conscious, you can identify with being the Almighty Creator living through your avatar, and that's when you're in that centerpiece between the spirit world and the living world. And I'm gonna tell you, when you get in that point, and you don't have a lot people don't. I didn't have a lot of anybody to really talk to. I had you to talk to. I had a couple of people in the group, man. But when you get to that particular point, man, it's insanity. And when you start seeing things manifest before you, and you realize how much power you have, and and you understand who you are, I mean, it's a hell of an experience, man. And you have to learn to master that. And so, I'm just saying, with these guys writing this thing in this book about Cthulhu, man, and Cthulhu, he that one that was dead that has arisen. That's you. Or that's the one that has awakened. A lot of them out there ain't Cthulhu. They talk about Cthulhu. They talk about their gods. Oh, I'm a god. I'm this. I'm that. But yet you still on your knees, bowing down to a Most High. How the fuck you a god and you sit down there being a servant? You know what I'm saying? But I mean, I ain't mad at you, because you ain't supposed to be no higher than what you are. Everybody ain't supposed to be on this level. And then they get mad with you because they want to make you think how they want to think. I don't give a damn how you think. If you want to be a servant, be a
Yes,
servant.
sir. All right.
But let's go on. Let's go on with this thing here.
Yes, sir. We
Because we about
almost
to
at
get to
two
set
hours,
time.
folks, and yeah, we almost at 2 hours, and we didn't even get to the good part yet. But here we are.
Look, man, if
Right.
people want it, if they want it, this is what they got to go through. If they don't want
Yes,
it,
sir.
the hell with it, man. Sit down there, man, and get tea bags.
They'll they'll
Get
they'll
get
be
get
okay.
get get the nuts
They'll
on
be
your
okay.
get the nut sack on your head and have it hanging like ears, and the penis hanging across the front of your face, and I'll call you Ganesha.
It'll
Mother.
be right.
Go ahead.
These books will be right here for you when you reincarnate. Hopefully, if you come back and you can find your way here. But here we go, folks. Page 106, Peter Levenda's The Dark Lord. As in the Catholic Mass, the gods are present in the Gnostic Mass. They are classified differently, of course, with a totally different emphasis. The reason this much time has been taken for a look at the Mass, its credo, and its transgressive characteristics is because it is the formula that most clearly represents the coherence of the Thelemic message. That is not to say that the Mass is perfectly coherent, of course, but then neither is the Catholic Mass. But it can be viewed as a kind of Wayang Kulit, a shadow play conducted behind a curtain in which the actors are flat, two-dimensional puppets standing in front of three-dimensional gods, but which, in this case of the Gnostic Mass, are replaced by three-dimensional human beings, standing in for extra-dimensional entities, those described at some length by Kenneth Grant, H.P. Lovecraft, and Typhonian tradition of magic. Like, for instance, Set. All right, here we have Set Typhon, folks. Set Typhon. All right. So out of Crowley's book, he had a formula for establishing contact with the old gods through the invocation of Set, son of Isis and brother of Horus. As must be obvious by now, Grant's focus throughout his aptly named Typhonian trilogy, as well as in the construction and organization of his Typhonian order, always has been the composite figure of Set Typhon. Set is the ancient Egyptian god that has been long associated with chaos, with the desert, with storms, with foreigners and foreign lands. The other, and with the murder of Osiris and the ongoing struggle with Horus, the son of Osiris. Typhon, on the other hand, is a Greek god who has many of the same attributes of a god of darkness, storms, and chaos. Typhon, like Set, was born unnaturally from his mother, and also, like Set, was the enemy of the pantheon. Thus, it was the Greeks who identified Set as a version of Typhon, and the form of Set Typhon came to be known in the Mediterranean. There has been much speculation in the academic circles that the legends surrounding Typhon are derived from those of ancient Sumer, specifically the creation epic known as Enuma Elish, and the episode of the serpent monster Tiamat, who is slain by Marduk in battle. As we have seen, Grant identified Set Typhon as a form of Crowley's supramundane contact, AWAS, as well as of the shaitan, of the
Khan.
shaitan,
Yeah,
the
Shaitan.
shaitan,
Yeah,
the shaitan
Yeah,
of the
that's the Arabic word
Yazidis.
where Satan came from. And they said that the Catholic Church so hated Islam that they named the devil after that. Some people call it Shaitan or whatever.
All
Of the
right, so
Yiddish people, which is known as the devil worshippers. You remember that? Yeah, but
mhm.
go ahead.
And linked it all to Sumer, shaitan. All right. Oddly, however, Crowley himself did not seem to focus on Set Typhon to the extent that his disciple would, except as a kind of twin to Horus, as we have seen. Crowley's attention was taken by Horus in his various forms of Harpocrat and the composite Ra-Har-Kahut. Among others, Crowley identified with what he saw as the solar phallic nature of Osiris and Horus, and indeed neither Set Typhon nor Set himself were major figures in the Egyptian pantheon of the Golden Dawn, where Set appears as the personification of evil in the rituals associated with the idea of the threshold and represents the averse Sephiroth and the Kalipoth. In this instance, Set would not be identified as a being whom worship would be directed. One gets the sense that if a member of the Golden Dawn were to construct rituals intended to invoke or evoke Set, that would be considered an act of black magic, a harmful to holy negative act. To Kenneth Grant, however, the character of Set is a rich vein of cosmic importance, and Grant expands on his theme considerably to the point that Set in Grant's scheme of things overtakes Horus and Osiris in relevance to the ideas embodied by Crowley's doctrine of Thelema, where Osiris and Horus represent the solar aspect of Egyptian religion. Set and Set Typhon represent the stellar aspect. Osiris and Horus can be identified with the rising and setting sun, and thus with the east and west, respectively. But Set is identified with the circumpolar stars, in particular with the Great Bear or Ursa Major, and the north, the direction of the sun's nadir beneath the earth. and the realm of Amenta, the abode of the dead. The author has elsewhere shown that the asterism known to us as the Big Dipper was identified with Set in the Egyptian text, popularly known as the Book of the Dead, specifically with the thigh of Set in the crucial opening of the mouth ceremony. The Big Dipper is also a critical asterism in the Necronomicon gnosis, as the gates between the world and the transdimensional realm are opened when the great bear hangs from its tail in the sky. Grant discovered the close association between the Egyptian Set and the Necronomicon, which further reinforced his theory concerning the tunnels of Set. These tunnels are hidden pathways on the night side of the Kabbalistic tree of life, known to the Kabbalists as the Sitra Ara, or other side, that he associates with the Kalipoth, the shells of the previous creation that was destroyed due to imbalance resulting in shattered or broken Sephiroth. Specifically, the Sephirah Gibura, or severity. These shards of an elder creation roam the cosmos as evil spirits or demonic forces. But to Grant, these are value judgments made by pious monotheists who ignore their true nature. But there is more to Set than even all of this. A close examination of Set's importance and character in the ancient Egyptian texts revealed that there is a close correlation between how the Egyptians understood Set and the initiatory process of Crowley's OTO, as well as the central thesis of Grant's OVER. In recent years, there has been much academic investigation and discourse on the nature and identity of Set. This discourse has ranged from the fields of pure Egyptology to studies of Gnosticism and the Kabbalah. Set remains an enigmatic figure, a stranger to the rest of Egyptian religion in so many ways. Indeed, the identity of Set's animal, the totemic creature, or zoo type, with which Set was identified in hieroglyphics in Egyptian art, remains unidentified. And even the etymology of Set's name is a source of controversy. While there is no space to go into all of this here, relevant topics will be highlighted so that the reader can appreciate the extent of the Crowley Grant Lovecraft concept. Characterized by Grant as the Necronomicon gnosis, who is Set? There are two basic schools of thought concerning the origins of Set. One claims that Set represents an ancient ruler of Upper, which is southern Egypt, who came into conflict with a ruler represented by Horus of Lower or North Egypt. It is this political and military conflict that led to the myth of the warfare between Set and Horus. This idea has been criticized that there is no historical evidence to support it, although it is true that pharaohs considered themselves rulers of both Upper and Lower Egypt, and that their double crowns were references to the union of Set and Horus. But I'm going to keep going, but just some historical context there when they said that the Set and Horus story, might come from two kings fighting in Egypt, but they don't have any historical context. They also had a piece in the movie The Mummy 2, where the woman was in the tomb and she saw a gold scorpion, and she said, man, this is a symbol of the Scorpion King. He's supposed to be a myth. There's no archaeological evidence of him, but we do have a Scorpion King in the basically in pretty much the data from Egyptology, where they said that there was a king named King Narmer, and he was the first king to unite northern and southern Egypt. So, maybe this could be based off of a story, but we'll see. This idea has been criticized that there is no historical evidence. So, another school has it that Set represents a foreign god and hence a foreign tribe, race, country. This foreign deity eventually became incorporated into the overall religion, representing all those concepts that were considered antinomian, transgressive, and other. There is some support for this interpretation, but it is by no means conclusive. The name Set defies translation, just as his totemic animal defies identification. The hieroglyphic representing the word for Set can be pronounced in various ways, depending on the area of Egypt and the relevant dynasty. Variations such as Seta, Sut, Seth, and of course Set have been put forward as alternatives. The determinative form has been used in words denoting storm, thunder, roaring, chaos, illness, nightmares, darkness, and a host of other dangerous phenomena. One theory is that Set represents that which separates or divides. Set is the god of alien lands, alien to Egypt and thus by extension the other, and the desert, and such is a liminal figure, a god of the threshold, the guardian at the gate to the underworld, as the Golden Dawn ritual testify. This may be due to, at least in part, the identification of the Set animal as an ass or donkey, specifically Equus africanus, or the African wild ass, a species that is known today nearing extinction, but which still survives in the deserts of Somalia and Ethiopia, having once been common in the Egyptian desert as well. This species thrives in different places and is largely identified with the Siri.
This species thrives in desert places.
Yeah, in the deserts and wastelands outside of ancient Egyptian cities. Indeed, one of the magical spells that appear in the Papyrus London Leiden magical manuscripts specifically instructs the magician to use the blood and head of a donkey in order to evoke Set Typhon. It is claimed that the sound of the donkey makes, its peculiar braying, gave rise to one of the most common utterances to be found in Crowleyan and in most Gnostic and Greco-Roman occult literature. Aeon, Io, both of which were considered names of the Egyptian god Set in the Greco-Roman literature and serve as invocations of that god. Set has been associated with foreign countries and their inhabitants. Thus, the people of Libya in the west were considered by the Egyptians to be followers of Set. The Semitic peoples of Mesopotamia in the east were also considered to be Set worshippers, and their god Baal was identified often with Set. Crowley's prime female deity, Babylon, also is obviously Babylon, and others have tried to identify the famous Whore of Babylon of the biblical apocalypse of the Babylonian Ishtar, Sumerian Inanna. This would seem to justify, to some extent, Grant's and Crowley's insistence that the source of the Thelemic Testament, Aiwass, was Sumerian, and that he might have been a priest of an form of Set Typhon. If this could be supported by other evidence, then it is clear that Thelema owes a great deal of its identity to the influence of that exemplar of the transgressive forces of the universe, and that Lovecraft's horror of the high priest of the great old ones, Cthulhu or Cthulhu, was at least in some measure justified. In addition, it is tempting to see the Semitic word Satan as a form of the Egyptian Set. They have the consonant sounds, S and T, in common, and both seem to represent evil beings. Actually, while the relationship is hypothetical at this point, the two words do have a lot in common. Add to that the general reluctance of Egyptian scribes to write out the name of Set phonetically, but who instead chose to use his hieroglyphic signifier in text, and you have an apt comparison to the avoidance of the pronouncing the initial consonant of Shaitan's name by the Yazidis. Both, incidentally, begin with the same consonantal sound. The initial S or S sound used for the name of Set in transliterated Egyptian is believed to be identical to the sound S in Satan and Sh in Shaitan, respectively. The Hebrew word Satan comes from the root meaning adversary or to resist, as well as enemy, obstacle, or obstruction. Depending on whether the word is used as a noun or a verb, it may come from the word soot, which means to fall aside or away, or the word set, which means one who revolts. The final N in the Hebrew Satan indicates an emphasis on the root for the purpose of the personification, and thus he who falls aside, or he who revolts, or he who obstructs. We remember that one of the earliest suspected pronunciations of Set is indeed soot.
Which, if you look at soot, soot is burnt down as carbon. But let's keep it going. Soot.
If it can be shown that Semitic ideas of Satan derived from the ancient Egyptian god Set, then Grant's hypothesis that Set, Shaitan, Typhon, or Shaitan, Typhon are one and the same takes on increasing importance. By identifying Awas with this signifier, we may understand the book of the law a little better, particularly its controversial third chapter, which sets the new Aeon in complete opposition to the world's religion in a dramatic and even violent way. The message of the Golden Dawn book by Aleister Crowley,
the Liber Aeon,
then becomes a message consistent with the personality and objectives of Set, the Dark Lord. On the other hand, there is a scene from the book of Coming Forth by Day, the commonly known as the Egyptian Book of the Dead, in which Set is shown at the prow of Ra's bark, fighting the serpent god Apophis. In this setting, Set is protecting the sun god Ra. If Set is evil, as often claimed, how is it he also can be depicted defending the pantheon? Indeed, some pharaohs even took the name Set as their own or added it to their titles. So here we have Set.
You know that I'm thinking that is the sun God version of it. When they took Set on that side and made him, because you got the moon worshippers or the stellar worshippers, which he was the devil. Then when you started going to the pyramid building side, that's when you start talking about Apophis. Am I ringing a bell with you? We talked about some of this, maybe
Yes,
years ago.
sir. Yes, sir. We've been going hard tonight. We reaching about 2 a.m., baby.
Because I mean, a purpose is a pimp, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
When you see that, yeah. But anyway, let's go, man. Look, man. Shoot, people used to listen to. I mean, they can listen or not. They listen to Panic or Bobby for 6 hours, 7 hours. I mean,
Yes,
hell,
sir.
if you go 2.5 hours, I mean, if you don't like us, that's fine. I don't really care, man. But somebody gonna take on this because this is some serious nonsense we kicking. We ain't out here
Yes,
kicking
sir.
that bull crap that everybody built. Yeah, Everybody want to get a YouTube channel, and we ain't trying to get a YouTube channel. We just basically this is what's been going on in secret in our group, and we decided we want to have it documented, and we wanted to share this with whoever wanted to get it. And whoever don't want it, man, go on about your business. I don't care. You know what I'm
All
saying?
right.
But anyway, let's go on to set as the tantric
A
god
tantric god.
because we about to get into the good stuff now.
Oh, yes, sir. This is for the hoteppers out there. Set
Yes,
as a tantric god. A recurrent theme in all of Grant's work is that of sexuality, especially within a ritualistic context. The OTO is said to be a repository of the sexual secrets discovered by its German founders a century ago, and the OTO's depth to the sacred spirituality advocated by the African American mystic Pascal Beverly Randolph has been detailed elsewhere. Tantra forms the main context of Grant's elaboration of the sexual mysteries at the heart of Thelema and the Thelemic magic. And indeed, Grant went much further than Crowley in his description of these mysteries and their relevance to Tantra, and in particular to Vama Marj Tantra, or Tantra of the left hand path, as it is often erroneously characterized. Grant's Tantra is not the New Age, feel good Tantra of the West, but the transgressive Tantra of the Nath cities. The Kaula circles and other traditions that view the human body, male and female, as both laboratories and temples combined.
Hmm.
Tantra, according to this approach, is a technology of spirituality, spiritual power, and tremendously altered states of consciousness, which has its goal communion with supramundane beings. In other words, precisely what Lovecraft described when he depicted the orgiastic rites in the swamps outside New Orleans in his short story, The Call of Cthulhu. While many readers will be familiar with the legend of Set murdering Osiris and Isis giving birth to a child, Horus, who will avenge his father's death in the battle with Set. What is not so well known is the sexual component to the myth. This is what hoteppers don't know, and even if they do know, they don't talk about it, but most of them don't know. For decades, this aspect has remained somewhat hidden from the non-academic world and buried in obscure Latin phrases and euphemisms and generally ignored. That Set was understood to be either homosexual or at least bisexual will seem strange to those who have always believed Set to be the personification of pure evil and murder, a kind of Jungian shadow archetype. But Set was representative of the other, and almost everything also represents sexual transgression. The perhaps ultimate expression of the otherness and the natural characteristic of the type of tantric sexuality that is the focus of Grant's thesis. All right, on to page 114, folks. Chapter 2, Gods, the Beasts, and Men. Peter Levenda's The Dark Lord. To understand this and its relevance to Grant's Typhonian magic, it is necessary to know how Egypt described the origins of Set. According to one of the cosmological systems of the ancient Egyptians, the supreme or eldest god, Atum, gave birth to the world by self-propagating his two children, Shu and Tefnut, who in turn gave birth to Jeb, the earth god, and Nut, the sky goddess. These in turn gave birth to Osiris and Isis. However, they also gave birth to Set and Nephthys, which disturbed the order of the cosmos, as until that time the system had been established whereby one female pair gave birth to only one other male female pair. Essentially, what the Gnostics would refer to as syzygies. Further, it has claimed that Set was not born via the usual method, but essentially tore out of his mother's side by his own volition in an untimely season and violent manner. Thus, it appears, though it is not specifically stated, that Set did not have a childhood per se, but entered life fully grown. Even the word for birth is not used in Egyptian texts in connection with Set's origins. Indeed, his own mother refused him, and his sister wife Nephthys was also in horror of him. Isis, Isis, whose brother husband Osiris was slain by Set, lived in fear of him as well, especially during her pregnancy with Horus. It was believed that Set, due to his unnatural birth, caused abortions, and that he would open the womb of pregnant women so that they would miscarry or abort. And even though each of the male female pairs of gods would go on to beget other male female pairs, Set and Nephthys did not have children, and Nephthys was characterized vocally as the one with the useless vagina. Nephthys runs to Isis in fear of Set, or to console Isis after the murder of Osiris, a situation more fit for a telenovela than the gravitas of
Gravitas.
gravitas of Egyptian religious mysteries. Thus, the Set and Nephthys couple, or dyad, represent the disorder of the universe. Evil enters into the cosmos through their unnatural entrance into the pantheon, and the carefully crafted structure of the created world is ripped apart. Thus, Set is the ultimate and perhaps the original anti hero. His birth and early years are models of rejection, abuse, and violence. Rejected by his own family, he turns to the abuse of them and their offspring, and violently attacks and kills Osiris, and then waits to do the same to Horus, his biological nephew, but not before sodomizing the crowned and conquering child. There is little doubt today among Egyptologists that Set was characterized as a homosexual god, and that the famous contendings of Horus and Set contain an account of Set's attempt to sodomize his nemesis. In fact, the attempted act of sodomy is the foundation for such an iconic Egyptian motif as the Eye of Horus.
There you go. That's what the eye of Horus mean. When I tell people that, and I've been saying that on Twitter, and I've been saying that, people think I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
It's the Eye of Horus, baby.
The Eye of Horus is pretty much getting it up the rear end.
Yes, sir. All right.
That is the other opening. You got to open it with your pineal gland, but guess what? Just like on a computer, you got a backdoor entrance. Here comes the door. Here comes the damn Eye of Horus. That's
Yes,
the back
sir.
door.
These
The
are
program.
Yes,
Go
sir.
ahead.
These associations were not generally known in Crowley's time outside a small circle of specialists. Had they been familiar to Crowley, they might have elicited a great many more musings on such themes as sexual magic. The mystery of the Aeons and the degree structure of the Ordo Templi Orientis. They certainly do lend support to such claims by later Crowley devotees that the new Aeon would be a homosexual Aeon. The males under the aegis of Typhon and the females under Maat. It was the mother of Horus, Isis, who suggested to her son that he avoid penetration by Set through the use of his fingers to cover his anus, thus capturing Set's semen in his hand, whereupon he flung the seed into a river. Set believed he had sodomized Horus successfully. In an estranged turnabout, Horus deposited his own semen on a leaf of lettuce, Set's favorite food. Set ate the lettuce and thereby was penetrated, orally we observe, by Horus. When Set bragged to the gods that he had sodomized Horus, the semen that Horus had thrown into the river spoke out and denied Set the satisfaction of his boast. At that time, Horus claimed that he had penetrated Set, and to prove it, the semen that Set had consumed issued forth from Set's forehead as a white disc. Before the enraged Set could grab the disc, it was seized by Thoth, the god of wisdom, magic, and writing, and placed in the sky as the moon. While this episode...
I just want to stop right here, and I just wanted to say, if you notice that, also, I remember I mentioned the eye of Horus can also be out the penis. So I'm not sure if that has any significance, but you see the thing with the anus penis play right here. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, I'm just pointing that out because he wanted to sodomize him, which is called the eye of Horus, but Horus stopped him from sodomizing him, and then Horus went and ejaculated on some letters and ended up penetrating him orally. But instead his semen came out his eye of Horus, which was in his penis. I'm just saying, because I don't recall where I remember reading that, but I think it was in the it either was in the book The Night Side of Eden, or it could have been in I'm thinking it's more so in the book called the Overthrowing the Old Gods by Don Webb. It might have been in that book, but go ahead, man.
All right. Okay, so while this episode certainly shows Set as an aggressive and violent being with homosexual attributes, it is not the whole story. In other legends, Set is still violent sexually, but in heterosexual as well as homosexual situations. It could be argued that Set represents desire or sexuality per se, while Isis may be a symbol of love, especially maternal love. She is not usually identified in terms of pure sexuality. Set, on the other hand, seems to embody lust, unrestrained. If we understand Set to represent raw sexuality, we can realize Set's place in the Egyptian cosmos. Set is power at its most primal and basic, uncivilized human level. Unrestrained, it results in rape and pedophilia, among other deprivations. Restrained, it can be a potent source of protection and occult power, but this power lives in a wild and uninhabited place outside of society, a wasteland of invisible winds and unseen beasts. Society uses this power when the need arises. At other times, it wants to go away, to disappear, which is as good a description of modern humanity's relationship to sexuality as any. It could be argued that our reaction to the concept of sexuality is based upon its more controversial aspects, from teen pregnancy and pedophilia to rape, adultery, abortion, pornography, prostitution, sexually transmitted diseases, and even gay marriage. Sexuality to the modern mind, West and East, is a minefield of dangerous associations. Crowley himself has the reputation of being a polymorphously perverse libertine who engaged in virtually every form of sexual expression during the course of his lifetime, and who had many multiple male and female sexual partners covering the entire spectrum of human society. From street corner prostitutes to celebrities, artists, models, poets, actresses, and wealthy matrons, this was Set, the Dark Lord and the God of the Midnight, and the circumpolar stars of the true north in eternal struggle with Horus, the Lord of the Sun, the East, and the ecliptic. Crowley, like Jacob before him, wrestled with an angel on the ladder, leading up to heaven. Only in Crowley's case, it was the Egyptian god that the Golden Dawn had taught him to fear and distrust, a god that represented the very sexuality that Crowley championed as being the vehicle for attaining the true mysteries. It was the god of the Black Mass and the witches' Sabbath. It was this type of sexual expression that so horrified H.P. Lovecraft to the extent that he never actually wrote about sexuality, except in the terms of disgust of the orgiastic rites of those worshiping the ancient ones. Lovecraft instinctively understood that extreme, or at least non traditional forms of sexuality were somehow linked to magic, occult power, and contact with supramundane entities. Lovecraft's instinct thus are linked to Crowley's magic revelations to form Grant's Necronomicon gnosis, Set as the Lord of sexual transgression, which means in any sexual activity outside of lawfully permitted reproductive sex is a tantric lord, as well as in the broadest sense of that term, Grant claimed that Set offers access to other dimensions and that a deep understanding of Tantra coupled with Western magical practice and analysis would lead the magician to the dark side of the Kabbalistic tree of life. This Setian Tantra would reinterpret Set's infamous sexual acts as ritual requirements designed to plunge the operator into a dangerous realm of consciousness below that are beyond that of the waking world. These acts would include everything from solitary sexual practices to various types of hetero and homosexual acts, including oral and anal sex. While Grant has argued that the enigmatic, what Roman numeral is that?
What, this right here?
See.
I believe that's the 11th. The 11th.
Okay.
Degree
All
of
right.
the Ordo Templi Orientis.
Oh, yeah.
Orientis.
Yeah, 11. Okay. All right. Did not involve anal penetration, insisting instead of the pervas nefandum, the unmentionable vessel.
You know, I
Required.
can tell you something on this. I don't know if I want to go on there, but even you know, a lot of this stuff, man, when you talk about the Catholic Church and him and even the Masonic order, man, a lot of this stuff comes together. And I believe that might be a Knight Templar's degree right there. And when you get to that Knight Templar's degree, you don't touch them boys when they walk through on the fountain because they're getting ready to go. It's in real life, they was getting ready to go to battle. When you get ready to go to battle, man, when you go and you get initiated at that level, nobody touches you because when you go on the wall, man, you know you about to get, you know, you potentially can lose your life. That's how I see it. You know, so you know that's funny that he would mention that. And even when you go in the Catholic Church, man, they have what they call the Knights of Columbus. Well, the Knights of Columbus has three degrees. So does the basic 3 degrees for the Masons. Man, let me tell you something. The Catholic Church is dirty, man. And so, you know, and you notice the Pope got a fish cap. You know, the Pope has a fish hat. And when we talk about Cthulhu, and he was talking about basically the fish. You know what I'm saying? The fishy gnarly smell. I mean, all this gnosis is intertwined with each other. But I'll
Yes.
go ahead. I just wanted to mention that because when he was talking about the 11th degree, I'm not sure now, but that could be the Knight Templar's degree. And the funny thing is, you have two sides. You have one side that goes to the 33rd degree, which would be on the right hand side, which would be the Scottish Rite. And then you have check this out, left hand path or the York Rite side, which only goes up to the 13th degree. But the 13th degree is just as powerful as the 32nd. You see what I'm saying? Well, when you go on the right hand side, you go. I mean, this is public knowledge. I mean, to those in the, it's not really secret to know this. When you go on the York, when you go on the Masonic, now they say there's no York Rite and no Scottish Rite side, basically. But you can't. They say if you want to do that, people just do it, because of their choice. But there was a York Rite side and a Scottish Rite side, and the York Rite side went to the 13th degree. Which, if you think about 13 is another significant number because 13 basically covers the pineal gland. 13 also covers basically the pineal gland sitting amongst the 12 cerebral glands, or it could be King Arthur and the knights on the round table. It could be the 13 zodiac. You know what I mean? It could be the 13 lunar sessions. But then on the other side, you got the 33. Well, it's 32 on the other side, but then it ultimately goes up, to the 33rd, which is the honorary degree. But the point that I'm making is, it's funny that you got 13 on a left-hand path. I mean, I'm just throwing something in there which is gonna make sense to somebody. When you get to a certain level, you put it together. I ain't putting all that shit together for you. Because if I did, you ain't gonna appreciate it anyway. It's just like someone walks up and you rich and you got money, and your parents just buy you a brand new Porsche at the age of 16. You ain't gonna appreciate it. But if you got to go out there and you got to work for it and do hard labor or whatever, and be frugal with your money, and you get to a point where you can not buying a Porsche is not just buying a Porsche. You get to a level that you can live a lifestyle that you can afford to buy a Porsche, just like someone can go out there and buy a Toyota. You're gonna appreciate it, and that's the same thing with gnosis. A lot of people don't appreciate this gnosis when you giving it to them. And as a matter of fact, they will scoff at you first, and they get into their ego because you might make them feel like they not as smart as they thought they was, and they're not. Like, I wasn't as smart as I thought I was, and I'm still probably not as smart as some people. You know what I'm saying? There's people out here, man, who could probably put me to shame with what they know gnosis wise. But it's the same thing when you have gnosis. It's not about how much gnosis you have. It's not about how many different orders you know. It's how well you know those orders. But it's good to have a little bit of variety. It's just like you can sit down if you're a martial artist, and you can learn how to use a lot of them tools. But you might not be able to slice a grape in half with any swords or hurt anybody. But if you got a man that goes out there and masters 3 or 4 good arts, and he can go out there and kill people with all 4 of them arts, and you put him up against someone that has been out there that has worked with 20 different weapons but hasn't mastered them, or is not that good with them, you'll go out there and slaughter him. But anyway, I get off on a tangent, but I think that was necessary what I was saying. Oh,
All right.
yeah. Well,
Okay.
go ahead, man. I just had to go. Just had to go off on that because when I thought that was very important to bring up when he said that you don't touch him. That's deep, man. And
Right. That's real.
That's something that would just fly by a person that is totally ignorant to that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyway,
Yeah.
we
All
move.
right. Okay. So that untouchable vessel, which in Crowley's allusion to the ritual refers to the vagina of a woman during her menstruation, rather than to the anus, giving new meaning to the term scarlet woman. There is precedence for believing that many other forms of non reproductive sex do have relevance for modern tantric practitioners. Shiva copulated extensively with his wife Parvati, except that he did not impregnate her in the usual way, but he ejaculated either in her hand or her mouth. These and many other episodes from both Egyptian and Indian religion would seem to indicate that forms of sexuality other than those intended for reproduction are being implied. And to many mainstream religions, any sexual act that does not have its intention, the reproduction of the species, is by definition evil and forbidden. Thus, we may call sacred sexuality, whether the pale and pastel mysticism of right hand Tantra, with its hours of silent, motionless meditation on the Shakti Yantra, or the red meat rituals of the Black Mass, replete with bodily fluids and loud fornications, and everything in between, is transgressive by its very nature and belongs to the realm of the Dark Lord. This leads us to another ritual developed by Crowley and based once again upon the rites of the Golden Dawn, into which he had been initiated and which continued to influence his magical worldview his entire life. This is the ritual of the star sapphire, which is known as Liber, not sure that Roman numeral there, or Book 36. The Golden Dawn had two foundational rituals that everyone was expected to learn and to perform. The first of these being the ritual of the pentagram, which was used to invoke or banish, depending on the direction the pentagram was drawn, the four Platonic elements: earth, air, fire, and water, plus spirit. Each of the 5 points of the pentagram was assigned to one of these elements. It is the basic circle casting ritual of the Golden Dawn, and the versions of it have been used widely in occult groups and practice for more than 100 years. This includes Wiccan groups, whose members often are not aware of the origins of their rite, which is sometimes called invoking the watchtowers, a direct reference to the Golden Dawn ritual, which was itself based on the angelic magic of Elizabethan magician John Dee and his medium Edward Kelly, of whom Crowley believed he was the reincarnation. The other more complex ceremony is known as the ritual of the hexagram. In this ritual, each of the 6 points of the hexagram is assigned one of the 6 visible planets, with the center of the hexagram representing the sun. Thus, depending on how the hexagram is drawn, one is invoking or banishing the influences of one of the planets. Crowley replaced both of these rituals with his own Thelemic versions. The pentagram ritual was replaced by the star ruby ritual, whose original angelic beings, Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, and Uriel, were substituted with god forms and more appropriate to Thelema, Therion, the beast, Nut, Babylon, and Hadit. However, when it came to the hexagram ritual, a fundamental change took place, one that may not be particularly obvious at first glance. This was the ritual that attracted the attention of Theodore Roos, one of the founders of the Golden Dawn, who visited Crowley in London and accused him of publishing the secret of the what degree that is?
The ninth degree.
The ninth degree of the order of his 19th 12 book, The Book of Lies, a situation that led to Crowley receiving the ninth degree from Roos on the spot, and the rest, as they say, is history. Crowley had already received the grades up to the including the
Seven.
that's
The seventh.
11th,
Seventh.
7th, yeah, the 7th degree from Roos, but had no idea that the higher grades consisted of the sexual secrets that he had published. Crowley, in writing out these sexually charged texts, was just being Crowley. He claimed that the star sapphire came to him in the same sort of the heightened state of consciousness that brought forth the other holy books. That we have discussed above. It was Roos who revealed to him what has become the biggest secret of Western occultism, that the core of the practices from alchemy and ceremonial magic are sexual in nature, and that the iconography of occultism, including Rosicrucianism, alchemy, mysticism, and magic, conceal sexual or at least psychobiological secrets. Okay. Crowley went on to rewrite many of the OTO rituals to become head of the order in the English-speaking countries, and eventually head of the order itself after the contentious WIDA conference in Germany. Thus, this particular ritual deserves close scrutiny as it was the catalyst that propelled Crowley to the headship of the OTO. It is also, according to Roos himself, the secret of the ninth degree in printed form. In addition, and most importantly for this study, it is a ritual that puts Set, the Dark Lord, front and center. An important book could be written on the star sapphire, as simple as it seems to be, and we will not explore all its implications and ramifications here. What concerns us directly is how Crowley perceives Set in his own Thelemic context. The ritual begins with the key phrase, "Let the adept be armed with his magic rood and provided with his mystic rose." This is the phrase that caught the attention of Theodore Roos. A magic rood, of course, is a rod or wand, and specifically refers to the cross on which Christ was crucified, the holy rood. This first sentence tells the adept to be armed with a cross and a rose, which is a symbol of one of the most famous European secret societies, the Rosicrucians, which name means, of course, rose, cross, or rosy cross. A rose and a cross emblem was also the coat of arms of the man who ignited the Reformation, Martin Luther. Thus, we can see the instruction of being, if not wholly innocent, at least bereft of any overtly sexual connotation, if taken in the context of 17th century European occult societies.
And think Martin
However,
Luther got his name after that man.
mm,
Martin Luther King, that is.
yes,
And a lot of people
gave
get
it.
upset about that government agent when but we gonna call him out for what he is, and if y'all want to get mad, get mad. I don't give a fuck. But go ahead.
All right. However, the rest of the ritual puts this initial phrase into a completely different context. After giving a number of quasi-Masonic gestures, the LVX signs or the NOX signs, both of which have their origins in the Golden Dawn, the adept is then instructed to go to the four cardinal directions, beginning with the east and proceeding clockwise to the other quarters, uttering a series of Latin phrases and drawing a hexagram in each direction. The Latin phrases are instructive. Translated, they are father and mother, one God, ara ritra. Mother and son, one God, ara rita. Son and daughter, one God, ara rita. Daughter and father, one God, ara rita. Ara rita is the same word that appears in the original Golden Dawn version of the hexagram ritual and is an acronym for a Hebrew phrase that means one is his beginning, one is his individuality, his permutation his permutation is one. At the end, the adept returns to his original position in the center of the circle, thus made and making the sign of the rosy cross. He then repeats the word Ara Rita 3 times, after which he makes the sign of Set triumphant and of Baphomet. Also shall Set appear in the circle. Let him drink of the sacrament, and let him communicate the same. There are further Latin phrases after this, which translated read, all in two, two in one in none. These are neither four, nor all, nor two, nor one, nor none. Followed by glory be to the Father, and the Mother, and the Son, and the Daughter, and the Holy Spirit without, and the Holy Spirit within, which was and is to come, forever and ever. 6 in one through the 7 in one name, Ara Ritra. All right, folks, page 122. We're almost done for the night. Peter Levenda's The Dark Lord, chapter 2, Gods, the Beasts, and Men. Fair use, folks.
And I'm just wondering why in this phrase when he went clockwise, that is the right hand path.
Mm-hmm.
When he went clockwise in the right hand path is supposed to trap you in this existence.
Mm.
Also, maybe we might cover these things on the end, but I'm saying a lot of these things that you hear them saying, man, we can just tap into our melanin. We ain't got to do all this kind of stuff to get there. We ain't got to ramp ourselves up like that. I mean, I'm just being straight up, man. A lot of
All
things
right.
they did probably was to get up there, to ramp up their energy so that they could get to a level that we just can get to naturally if you just tap into your melanin and leave them gods and them churches and stuff and all them religions alone and tap into your own energy. Cthulhu, Tsulu, Cthulhu. Go ahead, bro.
All right. Okay. So the emphasis in these phrases seem to be the reduction of all dualities to a singularity. Evidence of Crowley's fascination with the Indian concept of Advaita or non-duality, yet duality is at the heart of the ritual. So it is worthwhile to pause here to contemplate its intention. In the first place, remember that Crowley himself insisted that he did not realize that this was the ninth degree secret until Theodore Roos pointed it out to him and told him that it was the secret behind all of Western occultism. Crowley wrote it was a sexual rite and expanded upon the intention in a later chapter of the Book of Lies, but was unaware what he had stumbled upon. It may be that Crowley felt he was simply re-entering the rituals in sexual terms rather than discovering the real basis behind them. But what does Set have to do with any of this, and why is Set triumphant? If this ritual is interpreted in sexual terms and was the intention, we are left with the uncomfortable realization that 3 of the 4 pairings are incestuous in nature: mother and son, son and daughter, father and daughter. Crowley was delicate enough or pragmatic enough not to have included mother and daughter or father and son, most likely since heterosexual couplings would be necessary in the ritual of the ninth degree, in which both male and female fluids are required for the creation of the sacrament. The sacrament is to be consumed by the operator and communicated. The last word comes from the Latin Mass and indicates that the sacrament is to be shared, so that those sharing commune with the spiritual force invoked. In the Latin Mass, this is done with the sacred elements, the bread and the wine that have been transubstantiated into the body and blood of Christ, so that all those who communicate take communion, share in the experience of contact with Jesus, the slain and resurrected God. In the case of the star sapphire, since the ritual is patently sexual, the sacrament is composed of the male and female sexual fluids and is a form of the Gnostic Mass in miniature, as it were. What Grant points out again and again in his Typhonian trilogies is that these are not simply the gross fluids in and of themselves, but have been transformed through correct performance of ritual.
It's nut.
They thus,
It's nut, but go ahead.
they thus contain occult qualities which normal semen and female secretions, whether menstrual blood or the secretions of the mucous membranes of the vagina, which are carried.
Yeah, go ahead, bro. I'm sorry.
You good? Which are carriers of special essences known as kalas, to Tantra and to Grant normally do not possess. These qualities have nothing to do with the process of physical reproduction. They are obviously not necessary to facilitate the conception of a human child. An essentially element of this ritual, and indeed of all sexual magic, is contact with other forces, those beyond the physical world, so that all the grosser physical aspects of sexual intercourse, from desire to arousal to intercourse to orgasm to the fluids that result, must be reimagined, transformed, and transcended. As a ritual of transgressive sexuality, it would be appropriate for Set as triumphant, according to the Egyptian texts so far deciphered. In situations of murder, rape, sodomy, etc., in Set's defense of Ra's solar bark, his violence is put to good use in service of the pantheon. He is triumphant there as well. He destroys a serpent god, Apep or Apophis, with whom, paradoxically, he is sometimes identified. In the star sapphire ritual, it may be the transgressive powers of Set that the transgressive powers of Set are first identified and then employed in an act designed to bring the adept into contact with his holy guardian angel, as Crowley himself seemed to suggest in chapter 69 of the Book of Lies, where the subject of the hexagram is discussed in terms that are patently sexual and obvious, including an explicit reference to the sexual position known as 69, or mutual oral sex. The Golden Dawn instructions concerning the hexagram ritual make it clear that this is a ritual of macrocosm. The 7 planets, 7 of the 10 Sephiroth on the Tree of Life, as opposed to the pentagram ritual, which is a rite of the macrocosm. The 4 elements plus spirit are the 5 Indian tattvas. We may say then that the hexagram ritual, both the Golden Dawn original Crowley's reworking of it in a star sapphire ritual is a ritual of the heavens, the skies, and the pentagram ritual is of the earth. Therefore, the invocation of Set Triumphant at the climax of the rite indicates the unlocking of a gate between this world and the next, a gate that is not quite the same as that which Osiris would have unlocked. It has nothing to do with death and resurrection per se, but of opening a portal to the night side of the tree of life, to which Grant refers to as the tunnels of Set. Here, once again, Crowley has demonstrated the true nature of his mythos. Moreover, in a ritual that was written in a heightened state of consciousness, similar to that which gave us the book of the heart girt with a serpent, the book that formed the link between Crowley, the magician, and Lovecraft, the seer. That there is the performance of a sexual act in the center of the ceremony and the consumption of the elements thereafter is only another piece of evidence that Grant's understanding of the Thelemic praxis is representing contact with the Dark Lord is the correct one. In religion, humans are subservient to God or the gods, especially in the Abrahamic monotheistic religions. In Thelema, the emphasis is reversed with all the focus on human potential. There is no religious dogma in magic. As much as it might seem to be implied, magicians dare to do what religious, pious human beings do not, to actively approach the thrones of the gods, using whatever means are available, even the most blasphemous. The gods may be more powerful and even dangerous, but the properly trained human being can navigate the heavens and the hells with impunity. Chaos in Babylon, we might say Set and Ishtar, Dumuzi and Inanna, Shiva and Shakti represent the deepest occult processes that lie beneath the play of Maya, of the illusory world of creation. Chaos and Babylon are also the gateways to the dark side of creation, just as human sexuality is a gateway to deeper unconscious process that function powerfully below the horizon of conscious thought, calculation, and conjecture. They are irrational forces, which is the characteristic that alarmed Lovecraft the most. They were immune to sober scientific understanding, just as the immense vast of deep space lies outside the ability of the human mind to contemplate. The other gods, Isis, Osiris, Horus, Thoth, Anubis, the list goes on, and not only for Egyptian deities, but also the Greek, Roman, African, Indian, Chinese, and so many other pantheons are aspects of the basic and fundamental two of chaos and Babylon. For convenience, they can be considered refinements of specific aspects, points of view, chemical components, psychobiological qualities, but that is not to denigrate their importance or value to the magician. Any one of these deities is a potent force, far in excess of any human capacity to contain completely. The Typhonian tradition, according to Grant's thesis, is the most ancient of all religious and occult traditions. Its origin is in the stars, and it lies at the base of all later cults. That would indicate that its gods are the basis for all later gods, its rituals, the purer forms of all later rituals. But that would be to deny that human beings are capable of refining those ancient rites from time to time and fine tuning their original processes for reasons of self preservation, if nothing else. For Grant is not entirely optimistic concerning the designs of the ultramundane, extraterrestrial forces of which he writes so eloquently. His works are not only guides through the tunnels of Set to the dark side of the tree of life, they are also warnings. Warnings as sincere as those of Lovecraft were fanciful. And in order to understand those forces, it is necessary to see how they were invoked by a plethora of unspeakable cults around the world, in rituals secret and at times profane. That's chapter 2 for you folks. We did it 3 hours, but we got through it and we got some good gnosis tonight.
All right, time for me to get off the chain here with this here. I got a couple of things I want to point out. First of all, I'm not disrespecting these guys here because I mean, Peter Levenda did a great job in talking about Kenneth Grant, and I do like to get the understandings of the Typhonian knowledge, because like I said, a lot of that knowledge is in Britain and secret societies, and we are reading some of the books of people that was involved in that. Bobby Hemmett talked about the Typhonian ideology. But one thing I want to say is you got to understand when they're talking about the magician. We are not magicians. We are Cthulhu and the demons. We don't have to use magic in order to get there. The ones that have to use magic are those who are not the greater ones, from my understanding. So a lot of the stuff that you see doing here, I am not sitting down here condoning what they do. I'm not liking it and I'm not hating it, because you got to understand when he talks about all these negative things. Well, I don't even want to call them negative. All these things that a lot of people would see as being atrocious. You got to understand that all this is from the Creator, and it's a matter of you using it. Now, if you don't have enough melanin, or you don't have what you need in order to do it, then you got to find ways to rev that energy up, and you have some of us that get caught up in that. And so that's just something I just wanted to bring up that I've seen. And one thing they mentioned here was about the gods. They said that all gods came from these original gods, which were the Typhonian gods, which basically is Cthulhu or the greater ones. And that's who we are. And we are all stars. We're solar. We're solar beings. We are the suns. And a lot of times when people get the gnosis, they write the gnosis that they write or explain the gnosis in terms that work with their physical chemistry or their limitations on their ability to use it. You see what I'm saying? But when it comes to us, we are that which they are talking about, those primordial gods. We are Cthulhu. We are the demons. All that was us. Is us. Not was, it is us. But a lot of people are still dead and sleeping, man. And I'm not here to wake everybody up, man. I'm just here for the ones that's looking, man, and have put in the time and done the studying. And when you start hearing this kind of stuff that we're talking about, you're going to start putting two together, and you're going to start leaving some mother scratches. You're going to start noticing, man, that you're going to be like, you know what, man? I'm not going to be no Israelite no more. I ain't going to be no more. I ain't going to be no Christian no more. I'm not going to be this, because when you realize you above all that, man, you will stop putting labels on yourself. Stop putting religio and binding your mind. Stop letting these people give you these parroting stuff that you read from the books, and y'all sitting down having a jerk fest, standing in a circle, playing with yourselves, thinking that you so intelligent with all this gnosis, and all you doing and giving all that credit to some being in the sky that you projecting your energy to, and all the time it's you that you've been looking for. Just like with what's that with the Last Dragon, or with the Kung Fu Tiger. At the end, they found out that everything they was looking for was inside them. But yet, there's going to be people out here who are going to be naysayers. They're going to laugh at us. They're going to say that we're fools. They're going to believe in their Most High. They're going to run behind their God. Man, fuck them. Let them run. Let them chase behind themselves. The other thing I wanted to tell, and I'm not saying that in a way as being derogatory, because that's their choice, but if they look at us and get smart aleck about it, that's when I say F them. But if they doing it on their own accord and they have respect for the way I see things, well, then I have respect for them. I'm a mirror. I'm gonna reflect your reflection. If you come to me with respect, or you show a smile in the mirror, I'm gonna smile back at you. If you talk shit to me in the mirror, I'm gonna reflect on you exact same thing you did to me. There was one more thing I wanted to cover before I got out of here that I should have wrote this stuff down. But anyway, it was something else I wanted to say about the Cthulhu thing, which I thought was very important about all this. And it slipped my mind, but I guess it ain't meant for me to say, but it'll get covered at another time. But that's about it, unless you got something else you want to say.
I'm good. It was a long 3 hours, but we got there. And folks, the next time we meet, we will be on chapter 3, Unspeakable Cults of Peter Levenda's The Dark Lord. Remember, folks, the higher you go up in the pyramid, the less stones. So there ain't many of us up there. So like
Yeah,
to wish everybody peace, love, and chaos. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying, man, that one thing I wanted to say, man, I knew it's gonna be dynamic, man. But I don't care how dynamic something is, man. If a person ain't ready for it, they ain't ready for it because they got their mindset and what they're gonna be. And I don't really have a problem with it where anybody believes, really, to be honest with you. Oh, what I was gonna tell you too was, they talk about, you notice how they talk about the ether. I mean, they talk about the earth, wind, fire, and water and spirit. Well, yeah, you talking about those who have a spirit. We ether, man. We carbon. So we earth, wind, fire, and and earth is all combined carbon, us, ether, Cthulhu, soot. And so basically, they talk, I mean, they talk about soot in this aspect and the sexual aspect. And I'm saying, with all that, and I mean, all that's true. But what you got to understand when you talk about the creator's everything. You see what I'm saying? So if these are the things that you got to do in order to try to tap into this energy, because he meant, and I'm not trying to talk these people down, because I'm sitting down here listening, I'm sitting down here reading these books, man, and getting this some of this Typhonian knowledge, to piece stuff together. But what I'm saying is, you got to be able to have enough gnosis to decipher it, of what people are saying. You don't necessarily have to take on everything that they're telling you. I want the information. I don't want your understanding. I'll get my own understanding from it. You see what I'm saying? So because what's an understanding for you might not be an understanding for me. I ain't got to sit down and eat no nut chip mixed with blood dried up to get myself to get in touch with consciousness. And on the other thing I was gonna mention to you is, you notice when they talked about how Set was an abortion out of his mother. So that kind of sounded like y'all the boss or dollar boss to me. But again, it can be confusing because they seem to be mixing. They're talking Typhonian, but they seem to be getting into some of the sun deity ideologies. I'm not saying they are. I'm just saying this is how I see it from my studying. Because from my studying, we see the light as being part of the physical world. The darkness is the spirit world of nothingness. And out of nothingness came something. And so, even in the song, if we don't start nothing, won't be nothing. So if you in nothingness, it ain't nothing going on. So you got to start something. You start in chaos. You start something, won't be nothing. You don't start nothing, won't be nothing. So when they talked about Set or Typhon shooting out their mother's stomach as a abortion, or what the word they use as a, what was the word they used? Not abortion, but what was it, abnormality or whatever they shot out the womb. So abnormality or whatever, that sounded like the same story of Yaldabaoth, which is more so a sun deity, which is also the story of the God of the Bible, the demon. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that too. That's just some food for thought for people that's definitely gonna get confused. And later on in that book, they did mention that Apep and Aphis is the same snake, you know. So, and when you got Set fighting Aphis or Apep, that again is also the sun god ideology. When you fighting for Ra, you fighting for Yaldabaoth. And then when they did the thing, they were talking about going on the right hand path, and he was talking about, ancestral stuff and things of that nature. And I'm not saying, again, that I'm not that's a choice of some people. I'm saying I didn't have to do that. A lot of us don't have to do that. I'm not saying you can't do that, but you don't have to do that kind of stuff where you can tap into your melanin. Now, if you now you got some white people out here, man, too, man, that are black, man. They have enough melanin in them, man, to do what they need to do, you know, and they can do it. Just like that picture of that girl they had with that black birthmark on under her neck all the way down to her waist. That's showing you she got the mark. But it's physical. But some people it's not physical like that. But if you don't have enough of that melanin, you might need to do some of these things to ramp up the energy in order just to get in there, you know. But anyway, I know we done been on here a long time, but we ain't as long as some of these people have been, you know. But next time, let's start a little earlier, bro.
All right. All right. Well, we're going to end for the night, and we will see y'all next time.
All right. The Thulu, baby.
All right.
Yeah.